I'll just go live on the stream now. So, hello everybody watching on the stream. We are recording a Geek News Radio episode. I got Mike on the line. Say hello, Mike.
Hello, how are you all?
Got him, got him patched in here, and we'll just record the show, and I'll explain everything as we go along. So, where's my stopwatch? Need the stopwatch, otherwise we'll get in hell here. I mean, we have 10 hours on the recorder, so that's
Let's
good.
go.
Okay, let's do this. It's late enough, right? It's late enough. Let's do this shit. Hey everybody, you're listening to Geek News Radio. I'm Fab from Hamburg.
And I'm Mike in Scaries.
Mike, I don't know how this goes anymore. It's been way too long.
Well, that's how it is when you're a fast-moving freelance content creator as yourself. Isn't it, Fab?
It is fast moving. It kind of ran me over. I have to admit. It's kind of.
At least you chose what run.
Yeah.
You over, right?
I completely chose my own demise,
Yep.
so to speak.
Destiny.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, so I should probably first of all I should apologize to everybody because it took me ages to put the last episode out. So 81 was the episode where Dan and Dave were on the show, and we established that they're two different people. And to do that, obviously, I needed like that was a lot of editing work, right? We had to do, had to record all the takes, and then I had to edit it all together. So that's why that took a while. No, it actually took a while because I just I had so much going. But what happened? What I have actually done and managed to finally do after a month is rebuild the Six Gun site. So now when you go to sixgun.org, you have a new landing page with all the shows.
Yeah, and I wasn't aware that it would be such a huge issue for you, but clearly, yeah. Sorry.
Basically, what I had to do is like I had to so that main site was like the GNR site, and I had to migrate that to its own sub instance, and because it is so many plugins involved and everything, you can't really do that automatically. So I kind of had to do that by hand, and it's not like it's you know how these things are. It's not that much, like, it's work, but the worst part is like getting down and doing it because it's so monotonous. I kept like pushing it off.
And then of course you're sort of sending out old episodes on your feeds,
and it gets more and more
notifications. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, but
you had a few eager fans that were like, "Oh, new stuff from I thought this show was number this and that," and you were like, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry."
Exactly that. Yeah. So I had to do that, but now it's done. We have it all. There's still some stuff I need to iron out, with the mostly with the GitLab and everything. But it's really nice. And I launched a new podcast. So if you go to sixgun.org now, you can see that I launched my Magic podcast as well.
Which I'm be totally lost, like Fab.
I am, which I'm trying to do weekly. I'm getting myself into these situations where, oh god, I've been like today. Okay, so first of all, we have to get into what we're drinking, and I'm gonna start confessing here. You were dismayed when I told you this in chat a few minutes ago, Mike, that I'm drinking tea.
I was disgusted, horrified. What are you doing? This is the highlight of my month. I get to actually sit and drink alcohol while I'm talking to my friends.
You finally have an excuse.
And you're drinking tea.
Yeah. Can I explain why?
Okay.
So I had to I had a very long day. So it started with last night. So we're gonna talk about this on the show at some point. But I got into bread making, and I fell down the rabbit hole. And then I got into making sourdough. And last night I made my first sourdough bread. The problem is with sourdough, it's like this natural yeast and stuff, and you have to time it right. And because I have no experience in this, I timed it completely wrong. And so I had to bake my bread at like 1 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
I made a beautiful bread, but I only got to go to bed at like 3 o'clock.
It sounds familiar, like back in Denmark when we lived there. I did a bit of that kind of baking and yes, raising the dough and realizing that uh, I can't put it in the oven yet. It's like
Yeah, to
mm,
wait 5 hours.
yeah.
Damn.
So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
so I had that happening, and at some point, Will, I really want to talk to you. Like, I want to get you and Dave on and talk a bit about bread making because people were really interested in that. I've been posting pictures. Yeah. So anyway, and then I had a very long day. I had today. I just released GNR 81 just before we were recording this. I just got that finished when I got on the line with Mike. Yeah, so, and I need to stay awake. So that's why I'm drinking a very, very strong Ostfriesentee. It's East Frisian black tea. I'm trying to keep myself awake here. What are
so
you
is that
drinking?
I am having the Danish Royal Navy rum.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
It is amazing. You should have a look. So basically,
I'm having a
this
look right
rum
now.
harks back to the time where Denmark was a colonial power, because we actually did own 3 islands in the Caribbean, and as part of sailing back and forth from Denmark to the Caribbean, you obviously need a bit of a strong alcohol there
Oh
for the
yeah,
sailors.
definitely.
So this
Is
guy,
this sorry? Is this H.A. Riese?
that's the one, yeah.
Right.
So this guy, A.H. Riese, he was a pharmacist who got the royal charter to basically have a pharmacy on one of the islands, and then he also made the rum because he was a passionate rum maker, and that still survives to this day. Um, it's lovely, I have to say.
Royal Navy rum.
Yeah.
Dutch, no, not Dutch. Sorry, Danish. Dutch. Jesus, they can't do rum. This looks great. You know.
It's delicious, I can tell you.
You know what? You know what?
Tell me.
Can you hold on for a sec?
Of course.
I'm gonna run. I'm gonna be back in a second. Right.
Wow, I can see it.
I'm back. Oh, you're watching the stream, right?
Yes.
So I don't have Royal Danish Navy rum, but I have pot rum, which is
Very good.
it's not very expensive, but it's from Flensburg. It's nice. I'm gonna put that in my tea now. Fuck it, Mike. Fuck it.
It's medicinal. It's
Exactly. That's what it is.
If it's in tea, it's like medicine. So
I like that
yeah.
you're in the chat. Oh, that's something I need to mention. I am doing a little experiment. We're kind of live streaming this on Twitch while we're recording it. Because I was always we always put the shows up on YouTube like with just a static image, and that's kind of dumb, isn't it? It's very boring. So I thought maybe not all the shows, but some of them when it's convenient. I wanna live stream. Let's see how people like that.
Bring the content to the masses.
Bring the content everywhere. I'm just gonna put this excellent rum you're drinking in the show notes so I can find it again so I can buy it. Can you're buying it over there in Ireland, right?
Yeah, so Copenhagen Airport, for example, will have it and some variations of it. I think it might be a bit hard to get outside of Denmark.
Well, I can drive to Denmark. It's not far.
Yeah,
I'm closer to Denmark than you. And I can drive now. I have a car. We bought a car on the weekend. I bought an old Volkswagen Transporter T4, built out as a lovely little camper van. So Denmark is within reach now.
What was the name again? Merle or?
Yeah, Merle. We're calling her Merle.
Yeah.
which
Hmm.
is interesting because it's obviously in English it's a man's name, like as in Merle Haggard,
Yes, yes, I
but
see.
it's kind of it's a northern German uh, girl's name,
Mm.
and
I
yeah.
think I knew that actually. Yeah, I assumed it was a girl's name when you named it Merle.
Right.
Merle.
I don't know. The
Yeah.
guy I bought it from gave it like a man's name, but I'm kind of like I'm like kind of like with ships, like they have to have female names. I'm old school that way.
Ships and cars, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
give them a good woman's name. Yeah, for sure.
Right. So some other stuff I need to mention. I have done it. I've done the thing we always threatened to do, which is I've actually created the long threatened Patreon. Um, which
Woohoo!
was a running joke on this show for
Yeah,
about
yeah.
2.5 years. And I've now made it. So if you wanna support me and the network, you can go to Patreon. Go to patreon.com/fabsh FABSH. And there'll be a link in the notes. And yeah, the idea is to get a bit of support going. I mean, I'm not gonna live off that, but I have plans in the future. I want to send you guys some equipment and stuff to get
Oh,
the
awesome! Sign up for the Patreon, guys. Come on, come on.
to
Let's
get
get some equipment stuff
to
here.
get the audio quality up.
Well, full disclosure, I have actually signed up for Power Level 2. So
Yes,
it
I
says
saw that. It's very
I'm
cool.
serious about this. It says so. There you go.
Some
That's yeah.
your I don't know. You this is that if I then send you stuff, is that like money laundering? Are you tumbling?
Oh, yeah. All my drug money from selling Guinness powder to the locals over here.
Or
So
you mean the Brexit rescue packs?
oh yeah, well, don't mention them. I'm gonna make a killing. Like oh, seriously. We'll get to that anyway. But
Yes, that's why we're
yeah,
here. So
yeah.
you should mention that as well. So today I got Mike on because people liked our little politics thing, and I thought we should do it again. I thought we should do like a little catch up on what's going on with Brexit because God knows I can't keep up. And
Nobody
then
can.
after that I want to talk a little bit about the EU copyright reform because we haven't really talked about that on the show either. And
Mm,
it kind of goes together really well. They're both clusterfucks, and I want to kind of balance the clusterfuck on your side
mm.
of the channel out with the clusterfuck you're missing. Oh, you
No,
actually not? No, you're not. But Dave would
yeah,
be missing.
careful,
But
careful.
yeah,
Yes.
but yeah, you're like doubly fucked, right? You're fucked on both sides.
Well, that's what we can talk more about because living in Ireland and actually having in-laws in Northern Ireland, it's a unique perspective for me because I'm Danish, I live in Ireland, I have Northern Irish in-laws, which it just shows the vice that you're in. We're really
Mm.
caught between a rock and a hard place over here. But yeah, we'll get it. We'll get to that. But hopefully, I can give perspective enough to the cluster beeps. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, I mean that's kind of cool for me. I think it's great. You do have a great perspective. It's great to talk to you about this because you're like kind of in the middle. I'm
and
not
the
like
last one, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. The last one, of course, was journalism, which I think was that it was great to delve into the subject matter, and obviously it's very close to your heart because that's what you do. So now we can sort of move probably a little more broadly on different things that are sort of the
Yeah,
currents of the age, but we touched on them anyway on the Fresno B episode and
yeah,
other
and
episodes.
I
So
mean
yeah.
we can go back to the journalism stuff as well at some point. I got so
Mm,
much more going on.
yeah.
Yeah, and there will be some journalism stuff here because that's touching into the copyright issues as well.
Mm.
But yeah, let's start with let's start with Brexit. So do you want to kind of go through what has happened since we talked about this the last time?
Well, it's really hard
The worst
to
things, not everything.
yeah. But at that time, we were sort of looking at this kind of renegotiation thing. I think was beginning to come in. Theresa May was doing delaying tactics because people who have followed this sort of more or less will have known that just before Christmas there was kind of a important vote that was scheduled for Theresa May to present her plan to Parliament, because that's where they are now. The British, that they've basically made legislation that says we will leave on the 29th of March. That's encoded in law. That's something that the Parliament has passed as
Right,
an
and
act.
that's in 3 weeks as we record
That's the
this.
thing. So if in the next 3 weeks nobody figures anything out by law, by the British Parliament's own legislated act, they will have to leave the EU.
Right.
They've enacted that, and that's, that's the only thing we know actually at this point. So before Christmas, she was due to present this kind of withdrawal agreement in a format that was palatable to the parliament, hopefully. And then basically it was decided to kick it down the road and postpone the votes. And I think the time when we did the Fresno B was around the time where she was then gonna have this meaningful vote, as they call it. And as it happened again, it was voted down, and basically the withdrawal agreement that they've spent 2 years agreeing with the EU was comprehensively defeated in Parliament. And that left everybody scratching their heads, because if they can't get full majority behind the withdrawal agreement that they've spent a lot of time and energy making, now it's up in the air
And
still.
it's so that's kind of its default no deal Brexit, because as you said, they have decided that they will, you know, that on that date there will be Brexit. And
Yeah, so
since the
yeah,
thing with the EU hasn't like the thing they negotiated with the EU hasn't passed Parliament, it's currently in a state where we'll get no deal Brexit, if I understand it
yeah,
correctly.
that's the thing. So the only thing we know is in law is that they will leave on the 29th of March. Then what she tried to do was to get the withdrawal agreement agreed in the parliament, so that would sort of be on top of the 29th of March leave date. So they would have an ordered withdrawal with some like a temporary period where they would sort of extract themselves over a 2-year period from the different mechanisms and so on, but have sort of a managed departure, as they call it. But Ireland came into the mix, and has been for quite some time, where Good Friday Agreement, which is an agreement between the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland about uh, dismantling basically the border infrastructure that was in Northern Ireland. And I
Right. So this
remember
is this is
this
part of
actually.
the peace thing, right?
Exactly.
With
So the peace
yeah.
agreement that was made because of the troubles in Northern Ireland, where there was sectarian violence and you know lots of paramilitary activity and things like that in the 60s and 70s. And it's all about basically that obviously Northern Ireland is part of the United Kingdom, but has a sizable minority of uh, nationalists who want to be part of the Republic of Ireland. And then the yeah, there's different words for them, but I guess like the loyalists, or um, you know people the unionists who want to be part of um, the United Kingdom, they were obviously asserting themselves, and with support of the British Army and the British political system, were sort of pushing back on these kind of there was civil unrest or lots of violent protests and so on, to basically get rights and more protections for the minority, but also that they wanted to basically drag Northern Ireland into the Republic of Ireland. So depending on which side of the fence you're from, it's a very touchy subject still these days, and something that I've seen up sort of quite close because I've lived in Belfast, and as I said, my wife's from Northern Ireland, so I've seen it up close, and I can see what it can still do to the societies up there today, and still today, if you're either Catholic or Protestant, where the Catholics would be associated with Ireland and nationalism, and Protestants would be mainly associated with unionism. It's still like, you have schools that are segregated, where people will be one or the other uh, religion. They have integrated schools as well, but it's just a long process of sort of
Hmm.
this kind of
Yeah,
rapprochement where.
it's a bit weird from a German perspective because obviously we had the reunification,
Mm,
and there were lots of divides, like mostly ideological divides, because of course communism in the east, and the Federal Republic, over,
yeah,
uh, you know, uh, capitalism, to
yeah,
put
yeah.
it
Which, yeah,
simply.
which
But
kind of
like,
state apparatus you wanted to live under?
right.
Yeah.
But when
Mm,
the wall came down, despite all the prejudice and everything, the country grew together really, really fast. And
yeah.
the divides obviously weren't as big as they are um, in Ireland. And I guess it's also because religion wasn't involved. I think that's always something that complicates matters massively. Um, Before we get further into that, I would like something. Since we are streaming this now, we do have the unique experience that we are now getting feedback live on the show. And
Oh,
while I don't want to address that too much, we had a great question come in from one of our listeners, um, who is also on the Discord, Show You Rapper, who says, stupid American question. Is there a simple reason why the UK wants to leave the EU? Blaming the EU for holding them back financially or something. So I'm gonna put my take on this, and then you can say what you think, Mike, because I think this is also
mm,
something one can debate. But I've always felt that the UK was always a special member of the EU. So there, pretty much everybody in the EU has some kind of special rules. Like every country is a bit special. Germany has some special stuff, although we do try to keep it like the German approach has always been if we wanted something that the EU didn't want, we make the whole EU get it, right? So we try to push it in
mm,
for everybody else.
yeah.
Whereas countries like France and the UK more traditionally had like just like um, for certain laws they just had special rules. Like they had the EU would pass a law in a certain area, and then France would just negotiate. Okay, we have a special case here, and the UK had that a lot.
Mm,
And
for sure.
I always feel like as a mainland European, I always felt like so the UK never like there was always a bit of reservation towards the EU. I mean, over here it was the same, but there was always like this thing, this feeling on both sides that the UK didn't really belong, or in some cases didn't want to belong. So that's my feeling. So I think Brexit grew out of this general feeling, a general feeling that we have over here as well, that the EU passes stupid laws and that it's just meddling, right? It's meddling with the
Mm,
autonomous government of the country and having stupid laws that you don't want. And then in the UK, it was also a case of just like something we don't have in Germany that way, which is like nationalism, right? We do not have that kind of nationalism in Germany
mm,
anymore. But in
yeah.
the UK, it was always like us versus the EU, and we used to be the
Mm.
empire. So that's what I always thought it was.
Yeah, it's not so much I can add to that really, Faber. I think you draw out a lot of good points. I mean, you have to look at when when the UK joined the EU, it was pretty much a financial decision for them to get into the market and sort of kickstart their economy, because they were called the, what was it, the sick man of Europe. At the time there in the 70s, right? Their industry was faltering. There was a lot of uh, infrastructure problems and so on. So they made a leap into sort of trying to get a bite of the cherry, so to speak, and and be part of something that they could, of course, also get the advantages that comes with being part of a larger bloc and sort of getting closer to your allies, also in the sense of post Second World War. Because that was sort of the philosophical part of the EU. I think was that it was to avoid the big nation state wars that we had seen so much of in Europe. But primarily it was financial incentive, I think, that made the UK join, and they were always a little bit, um, what should we say, like one foot out the door, I think, because they didn't jump in heart and brain first. It was more sort of jumping in with their brain and going, okay, this is a good thing to do, and
Well, I
and I'm
guess,
sure
but
that, yeah.
but I feel like that's nothing special. That is a general case with the EU. I mean, the EU grew out of a economic union, right? It was also there are idealists and European idealists, and the idea has always been to some extent to prevent the next war in Europe. The theory being that if all the countries trade with each other, it will be so much harder for them to attack each other, right? Like one of the
Exactly.
big,
And mhm.
yeah, go on.
No, but I think you have to see continental Europe, the major powers there, Germany, France. Uh, they, they had a lot more stake in this, I think, and then you can see it. Emmanuel Macron, he wrote a opinion piece there a couple of days ago about how Europe needs the EU more than ever, right? And of course, you would have to say that. You could say if you're being very cynical, but that's he really banged the drum for how it's the invisible glue that kind of keeps the continent peaceful and prosperous, right?
Right.
Also
Yeah. I,
outside of finance, but actually, as you said, make it just so much more difficult to start sliding down the
well,
warpath, so
yeah.
to
I
speak.
think it's also it's a block, and it was in the Cold War. It was a block against the Russia, right? And still it
Mm,
is to some degree. I think we can get into this a little bit later. That I think that it's in the interest of Russia to destroy Europe as a union, and that was always also a thing. Like it's like whereas the U.S. is was always concentrated on NATO um, being the thing that would protect or hold together Central Europe against, put it in air quotes, the Russian threat. Um,
mm,
I always thought that was very short sighted because I mean, as a German, you have to think that. I mean, I can't believe I've never like ever since I did history, I can never understand Germans. Like there are lots of German politicians that are gung ho about NATO. I mean, the NATO um, official NATO strategy in the Cold War in case of a Russian invasion was to give up Germany, like or half of Germany. Like the line would have been drawn somewhere, next to the French border basically, and they were saying this is not defendable. Like you can basically the Russians would have to go to Frankfurt. That's why the base was in Frankfurt, right? That's where they were
mm.
gonna make their stand. And as the German, you're like, what the, what the fuck? I could never understand people believed in that. Whereas like the European Union, with that being a market, um, that's glue that holds everybody together as well, also against aggression. You know,
Mm.
because if you're in a single market with Poland, right, and somebody goes and annexes Poland, then that is against all your interests, right? You got to keep the single market together, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, if you look at sort of the eastern states that were young and sort of finding their feet, like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, I remember about 20 years ago, like maybe even more, like 25, maybe, Denmark, for example, really went out of its way to try and bring those countries closer, and also help them with their eventual inclusion into the EU, right? And that's exactly what you say, that was a more peaceful strategy of trying to keep the big beast in the east at bay by, you know not sort of building military bases and things like that, but actually helping them with infrastructure, business, uh, some political stuff as well, and sort of not copying our way of doing stuff to them, but basically just having that very healthy dialogue, which
Yeah, and
centers
I'm
around prosperity.
and I mean I don't want to. I'm not somebody to blame Russia. I think that's on vogue right now. I'm generally not. But you can even without that, like I mean, you can see what happened in Ukraine.
Mm,
Ukraine wanted to be part of the European Union. Now, this is my personal opinion. As
yeah.
somebody who studied politics and fancies himself a little bit of a historian, what I saw there was the EU extending itself too much, get, getting extending that branch to Ukraine too quickly, basically threatening Russia.
Mm,
When you had the Maidan protests, the Russians perked up. They were like, we gotta, and this is when the annexation of the Crimea happened, right? So
yeah.
this happened before the EU could get the Ukraine into the EU, because if that had happened with the Ukraine being a EU member,
Mm,
don't mind NATO. I mean, NATO didn't react. The Crimea, there are no American tanks in Ukraine, right? So NATO
mm,
didn't react, but the EU would have had to react if the Ukraine was a member country. I'm not even saying militarily. I just mean politically. And you know, I mean, you can react economically. I mean, the Germans, we are buying a hell of a lot of gas from the Russians.
yeah.
Nord Stream and all of that, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and as committed as Germany is to the EU, if Ukraine would have been a part of the EU, they could have conceivably seen Merkel going, no trade with Russia anymore. And I mean, as powerful as Russia fancies itself, that would have been a serious problem, because getting all that gas to the other side of the country and trying to selling it to the Chinese
Mhm. Yes.
wouldn't have been that practical. So I think, I mean, that's, and the thing I don't see is, like, I've always seen the UK as very um, short-sighted. I mean, a thing the UK, in my eyes, has always in common with the US is isolationism. Whereas it works for the US because they have the Atlantic Ocean, the UK only has the Channel, which is
Yeah. Yeah.
laughable. I could never understand that half-assed, like. So I always felt like the UK's stance in the Cold War was always, okay, if the Russians invade Germany and France, just let them. We have the Channel, right? And you're like, I can see to the other side
Yeah.
of that.
Yes, yeah.
Never mind them having nuclear weapons. I could just, like, they could just, like, the Germans in World War II managed to fire across that with rockets.
Yeah.
I've never understood that. So I don't. This the whole Brexit thing to me is just like insane. And I mean, we saw. Did you see that May basically admitted that she just didn't know how the EU works when when they negotiated Brexit, and this is why the negotiations were so shit on the side of the UK.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of things that have popped up that they should have been wiser to catch earlier, and the Irish border that we discussed earlier is definitely one of the things they've been completely blindsided by. They won't admit it, but the thing is, the Good Friday Agreement is the peace agreement that has been made between the UK and Ireland with regards to specifically dismantling all the border elements between the two countries. And this was a huge thing back in the day because I didn't see it in its full flow, but when I started visiting my then girlfriend and now wife in Northern Ireland, I remember going through some of the checkpoints that were still there with the British Army checking everybody that were driving from the Republic into Northern Ireland, and it was much worse, decades ago. And obviously, my wife remembers, that soldiers came and knocked on the door and wanted to speak to her family and things like that. It happened to everybody up there, especially the ones that were, um, looked at as potential terrorists, basically. The people in the Catholic community. So that's not that long ago. I mean, obviously now we're in our 40s, but this is what she remembers from her childhood and early teen years, that causes a lot of um, things that people think about when they go into their adult life, and this is why it's staggering that the British government did not understand that when they were effectively gonna pull Northern Ireland out of the EU, and they had a binding agreement, a peace agreement, the Good Friday Agreement, that specifically states that there will be no um obstructions from passing between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland to keep the peace. This should have been flagged so much earlier, and it was ignored for a long time. And I think I've actually said on previous podcasts uh, last year that the Irish border will become a problem.
Yeah, yeah, you
And
said that right from the beginning.
and it did.
You said
And
that from, I think, the first time anybody ever mentioned Brexit, and you were on the show. That was the first
yeah,
thing you said. Yeah, I mean, kind of no brainer, right? I don't. That's. It's just like it's baffling how they approach this thing. The whole thing to me is baffling. I mean, I don't know if it's. I feel like I'm getting old now because I have all these topics where for like when I was 20 or something, right? I used to say these things that I really believed in. And I've changed my mind on a lot of things. But like, I can remember, I used like 10 years ago, I used to tell people who bought the diesels, like, why are you buying a diesel? It's like the dirtiest engine you can buy, right?
mm,
Um, and it's now people are waking up to this, and I'm going like, what, you noticing this now? And then now they're going insane. They're like, I
yeah.
just bought a diesel. By the way, I'm regressing. um, but like, I'm just being an outlaw basically, diesel
Well,
outlaw. Um,
you're in a permanent state of regression, Fab. I hate to say it.
Probably permanent state of regret. Uh,
No, but
I'm
it's
writing this
interesting.
down.
Yeah,
Uh, no, but the other thing is like,
yeah,
sorry, just to finish this thought.
yeah.
The other thing is just, I had always said, um, with like not even Brexit, but I was always of the opinion, I still am, that referenda are a shitty idea. That they work in certain countries, like Switzerland, for example,
Mm,
pretty much because it's small and has a very specific political culture that for a long time has been geared
mm,
towards that. But I think our democracies, like yours in Ireland, the one in the UK, in Germany, they were never. There's a reason we build our democracies like this, and you might not
mm,
like it, but I always thought referenda are a very, very dumb idea because I had always been convinced that they just lead to populists saying stupid things that people want to hear. And they then voting for something that they do not understand. And I mean, you can see this in Brexit. You can see this. I recently ranted about the summertime decision the EU is doing,
mm,
where people were just, they vote just, you can ask, there've been studies done now that people voted for to have summertime all year round because it sounds great because it's summertime. And wintertime sounds shit, even though the term wintertime doesn't exist. It's standard time. It's like normal time, right? And it's
mm.
just like, I'm sorry, you don't want to give people the ability to do this. This is why we elect. I mean, I'm not saying our political system doesn't have problems. I mean, we have lazy politicians, we have dumb politicians, we have lobbies, right? And these are all problems. But I don't know. With a referendum like this, you see what happens when. I'm sorry. The big the large amount of people together is just dumb, and they get dumber. The dumber the more you get in one place.
Well, I know exactly what you're saying, and I think the huge discussion right now between the basically the people in the UK and their elected representatives is exactly that. What did I actually elect you for, right? Because there's a sizable chunk of the population there that are going, I voted for you. If I tell you to do something, you will do it. And some of the representatives are saying, I'm sorry, but I'm elected to represent the constituency, and I will listen to my constituents. And they have their surgeries, as it's called, where they receive people off the street, and they come in and tell them about their problems and so on, and they bring them into parliament and try to do something about it, and that's a good thing. But at the end of the day, and I think your point is exactly that, you've elected somebody to represent you because you have decided and have acted according to how your democratic structure is, that you've given them your voice. And if they decide to do something that's not exactly in line with that, but they think that is the best thing for their constituency, isn't that what a representative elected politician is? That's what I think.
Yeah.
But there's a big movement now of people going like, you will listen to exactly what I'm saying, and then you have to do it, right?
Well, the thing is,
And
the argument I has always understood is the huge dilemma with a thing like a referendum is, I am a strong believer, or I was for a long time. I'm still a strong believer. I still think you need to carry it through, because you're basically, if you're having a democratic process, even if it's shit, and that produces a result that you don't want, then if you just overthrow that, right? I'm talking generally here, then that's a bad idea, because it will reduce people's belief in your democratic system for good reason. Now, I've held to this for a long time on Brexit, and I've changed my mind now. And basically, my thing about this is, I think I'm watching a lot of Star Trek at the moment, right? Watching a lot of Picard speeches, and that man says a lot of very intelligent things. And I
he
can't.
shall be elected emperor of mankind.
Yeah, he. Oh God, I would vote for him immediately. So the thing is, like, I don't know in what speeches this, and don't really watch contests, but at one point he says something that basically boils down to, yes, you have rules, and it's probably the prime directive or something. There's good reasons for these, and generally you should follow those, and you should follow the laws, and like in 99% of cases, basically you should do this. But there comes a point where your conscience tells you, I can't follow this. Like, it might be the law, it might be just, but at this point, generally it would be a good idea to follow this, but in this moment I can't. And I think Brexit is one of those cases where we have seen now that it's obviously such a bad idea. At least it's a bad idea to go through with it now, and in the way they're going through with it. Like, table the thing for 2 years. Table it for 4 years. You don't have to decide it now. Just stop what you're doing, recognize, and the problem is politicians are really bad at this, recognize that what you're doing is an absolute clusterfuck. Stop what you're doing, table the thing, and have discussions and try to figure it out. And you wouldn't even have to renege on the referendum. You'd have to say, okay, this is a point where we're obviously seeing we can't go forward with this for all of these reasons, and let's just rethink this whole thing. Yeah. Right?
Because it was an inherently stupid referendum for sure, because there was no substance behind it. Well, 50% of it was pretty well outlined, which was staying in the European Union. We kind of knew what that meant. But leaving it, there was absolutely no substance to what that actually meant. It seemed like a very simple thing. But the problem, as we've seen, is that since the parliament then decided to enact the law that said that we will leave, we will trigger Article 50, which gives us 2 years, and then we'll leave. And that they made it into law, which is another really stupid decision.
Yeah.
Because they've painted themselves into a corner now where the inevitable political seesaw about what it actually means has funneled them down into being 3 weeks away, and still there's no shape or form to what's going to happen, right?
I don't understand the Tories. The Tories are just fucking dumb. Seriously. I understand the populists, right? But the Tories are just dumb. What they should have done is what politicians everywhere can do. Yes, we're going to leave, and then just fucking swamp it. Right? I mean, I've recently read about this thing where, like, was fascinating to me. I don't understand what countries in the EU have the euro, right? And apparently Sweden has pledged to get the euro. And the thing they
Okay.
signed, if you read that, it's like a thing they signed. They basically said, we commit to getting the euro at some point.
Yeah. Okay.
But that could mean the
Yeah.
41st millennium.
Yeah.
That's how you do this shit.
Yeah.
You shut up the people that want it, and then you just bury it in bureaucracy.
Ah,
Right?
that's where the standard template construct came from.
Exactly.
It's IKEA.
Yeah. Perfect. Yes. So there's your 40K reference for the night.
That's what it is. You know,
Yeah, it
the
is
Emperor
like,
of Mankind is Swedish,
oh my
and
god,
he's
it
decreed
is.
that we must recover all the IKEA knowledge that was lost
It
in the
is.
age of apostasy.
And they're just building
Oh
it from
God.
the pictograms, right? They don't know what they're
Yeah.
doing, but the pictograms are so easy that sometimes like screws are
Yeah.
missing. But yeah, so
Right.
yeah, it's just like that's how you would do it. And I don't understand the Tories, because if you look at the history of the UK, generally the Tories know how to do this shit.
No, but see, what has happened is that the divisions in the party have finally cracked them. Like, it's always been there. There's been a group of Eurosceptics that have been gnawing away ever since they joined the EU. And I mean, a lot of the stuff that came over the years, if you remember the thing with the bendy bananas and
Oh god, yeah,
stuff
this
like
is
that,
just complete
a lot of
bullshit.
that actually came out of the UK
Yeah, yeah.
press that was being sponsored by this rich and very unhappy group that didn't want to get straitjacket into actually giving people, a bit more protections and minimum wage and standards that protect people and all of these nasty things that take away from their profit margins, right? I mean, that's the way I see it anyway. That's, there was all this group of people that didn't like all this regulation shit, right? Because it
Well,
just makes life so much more difficult.
I can understand them at some point, because the EU is the EU is passing some very stupid laws, and there's some really annoying shit about the EU. And I think one of the big problems here is that nobody understands how the EU works. I did, I think, 2 semesters in uni on the European political system, and I don't understand how it works.
Okay.
It's a fucking. It's like if you look at the government organs of the EU, the council and the parliament, and then try to understand how that all works. It does your head in. And I mean, Show You Rapper was earlier in the chat, like asking, like from an American perspective, what would it be if the EU just had more of a government? Kind of like the federal government in the US. The EU is often in lay terms compared to that. But it's very different, because Germany is like the US. We have a federal government, and we have very independent federal states. In some cases, a lot more independent than the ones in the US. But like the EU is the EU is a different beast. The EU is more like the UN. The EU is kind of like a transnational thing. The difference is that it's not a world government, because like the tenet of the EU is like that all the states are still sovereign states. That's why the UK can do what it does now. It can do a Brexit, but it's just hard for people to get their head around. And then the way the legislation works, and the EU is not doing itself a lot of favors often. And we'll get to the copyright reform in a bit, and I'll talk a little bit about how that's going wrong. But like from the perspective of the UK, I can totally understand it, because for many years the EU has been a political tool in the case of in the toolbox of the German government, to specifically form the market in a way that is good for German companies. Just look at the car market in the EU. That's all our lobbies. There's all German companies. And if I was a car manufacturer in the UK, I would be fucking pissed off.
But they don't really have a UK car industry anymore. They have
but
Japanese and German and so on that come in and set up production facilities or maintain the ones they have.
Yeah, well, they did that at some point. But yes, I would also argue that they shot themselves in the foot. They weren't destroyed by the EU.
Really?
A little bit.
I think so.
I can kind of understand, though. Like, I can generally understand where that's coming from. But if you have half a brain, you have to see that all the good stuff that comes out of the EU is just like so much more important. like
Yeah,
peace
that,
in
yeah,
Europe.
yeah,
Or
exactly.
like, I mean,
Yeah.
stuff that's even not really connected to the EU, but like the euro. Like, I do not fucking understand countries that didn't want the euro. The best fucking invention there ever was for everybody. For rich people, for people who just want to cross the border and spend money.
Mm.
It just gets money circulating. It's the best fucking thing for
But we were one of those countries
capitalism.
that didn't want the euro, right? Denmark.
Yes, I
We had
know.
the referendum and we elected it, and we
Cannot.
actually asked for some exceptions as well on a few things
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
immigration and security and stuff like that. So
Cannot understand that though. It's so dumb. It's such a big border to Germany. You know how
but
much more
Fab, Fab,
how much more
Fab,
people would
wait,
drive
wait,
over that
Fab,
border and buy fucking hot dogs if you could pay
listen,
them in
listen,
euros.
Fab. We have the Queen on our currency.
Yeah,
You know,
God.
it's very important.
Well, you could have had
It's
your own euro things with the Queen on.
and be together with the rest of the plebs that we have to look at their Italian Leonardo da Vinci things and the German eagle and all that. No, no.
The
What are
fucking
you saying?
eagle. Uh, yeah, it's like, yeah. I guess for Germany, so for Germany, the EU thing is just like okay. So Germany is very special. I feel because Germany is kind of like, since World War II, we didn't have that nationalism anymore,
Mm,
and we had in the 90s the unification, which to a big part is also down to the EU, or like the economic area that came before it.
yeah.
That was a big factor, and for us, that was just like great, and for our companies and our economy, this was all great. And I can see that if you're Greece, you're getting fucked over a bit more by the EU. But then on the other hand, I mean, like,
Mm,
they fucked themselves over. Like, I talked to
mm.
to people in Greece who were like, yeah, nobody paid taxes. It's
Mm.
like,
And they got
how
huge pensions and
yeah,
it
how do you
was
expect your state to work,
yeah.
mate? Like, what
But
the
like
fuck?
in Fab in '98, I think it was '96. It was a couple of years after the reunification and it was probably '96. Yeah, I went to Dresden with
Mm,
my high school class, and we visited another high school class in Dresden. And it was really, really educational because obviously I visited a family which was East German, sort of lower middle class, probably, um, because the parents were like, I think the mom was a teacher and the dad was maybe an engineer or something like that,
all
and
right.
and they probably had an okay life before the wall came down,
Yeah.
but still the infrastructure that I saw there, their home I was in, and this was a couple of years after the reunification,
Yeah.
it was still compared to where I grew up.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was
Yeah. I know.
so
I know what you mean.
poor
Totally.
looking,
Yeah.
It's like their
Yeah.
school things didn't work there. Like, we did a bit of football or basket or something like that, and then we went to try and get a shower, and basically they all washed in their wash hand basins, right? Because the
Yeah. But you
showers
know
didn't work.
what? You know what? We had years of just like, so we have this thing in Germany that's still going on today, where like West Germans, on the thing where they deduct your taxes, right?
Hmm.
They deduct taxes and social, payments for the social system, and then you have, if you're in church, you have payments to the church, and
Hmm.
then you have the Solidaritäts,
Solidaritäts,
the Soli,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
and it's basically you're paying money, like, and I come from the rural area, so an area that in the
Mm.
90s had lots of economic problems. I mean, we were basically like that coal mining area in the UK, right? That's the same thing that happened to my, my home. All the coal mines, all the
Mm.
steel mines shut, and all the people got unemployment, and our infrastructure turned to shit. But all of us were still paying money, and that was going into East Germany. And then for a
Mm.
while, East Germany had the best, or still has the best highways ever. Like
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
just pristine. There's nobody there, nobody driving on it, but they're great.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's okay. There were like lots of people bitching about that. But like on the other hand, you're like, the country now grew back together. I mean, you
Exactly.
gotta
And
gotta see the upsides.
you have to respect that so much, because which other country can you think of where you would actually be able to have a social contract like that, where people go, yeah, it's a bit annoying, but okay, we'll do it because
It's
it's a
very
good thing, right?
German, isn't it?
It's so German, and it's such an example to the rest of the world still to this day, right? And I'll finish the story with the family there I visited,
Yeah,
because
sorry.
what it told me was, and I was living with them, right? So they were sitting there in the evening, we had dinner, and then they showed me their albums of having gone on holidays for the first time in to Mallorca or somewhere like that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, of course.
And they were so proud and they were so happy, and it taught me so much about these people had been living in a bubble in this completely different society for a long time, and they were looking out of the bubble into the rest of the EU, right, or the Europe around them, going like, why can't we have a bit of that, you know?
Yeah,
And I could really see that that's where the groundswell came from, that at a certain point, if you have a society that just doesn't work, like everything's broken in it, and you can see that something else actually kind of works outside of it, I can totally understand where that came from.
yeah.
That people just said, we're not really gonna fight a lot about it, but we're just gonna stand here until you fucking do something, right?
It's
Because we're
obvious
tired.
now that this isn't
We're
working. Yeah.
tired. Just give us
I
a
mean,
little bit
there
here,
there are these amazing stories, right? So I
Yeah.
worked in Hanover, and Hanover is right on the border. It's right in the center of Germany. It's right next to the border. And I come from West of Germany, but we heard a lot of these stories. But like I didn't live them. But and I was pretty young. But they had like the stories when the wall fell, right? So
Mm,
the East Germans, when they crossed the border, everybody got 10 mark.
mm,
You drove through over the border crossing,
mm.
and they handed you 10 mark, and then
Oh,
everybody got that once they just like ticked your passport number off or something, right?
that's
And
incredible.
there are these
That's just
stories
incredible.
of all these
Yeah,
trubbies like driving into Hanover, and
yeah,
the whole sky being gray
yeah.
because of the
With
motors,
the
right?
exhaust.
Those were that was some fucking
Yeah,
terrible engines, like
yeah,
compared to diesels. um and like people are just going nuts because they didn't know that the free economy, right? They had 10 mark. They
yeah,
were just doing crazy shit. They were just getting drunk, getting prostitutes, doing it, just buying tons of sweets or whatever.
yeah.
It's just like
Freedom to do
crazy.
whatever
Yeah,
you
and
wanted, right?
that must have been such like I was too young to really experience it. I know
Mm.
that one of my earliest experiences, like my parents just never watched that much TV. They only watched the news, and my parents for weeks just having the TV on, like coming home from work, TV on, and being really excited.
Yeah.
And that was like before the when the wall fell, right? That's the
Mm.
thing I can still remember, and that was just such an exciting time. Although, having while we talked about all of this and Germany and Denmark, I've solved the problem with the EU. I think I've
Oh,
solved it. So what we
okay.
need to do is we need to halve the EU, and I guess we can solve 80% of all the problems in the EU if we just have a northern EU and a southern EU, right?
Controversial.
And you and us, the Germans, the Danish, whoever wants to join, and Swedish, if the Finnish want to, we'll all be one happy, organized, uh, obedient part. And
Yeah.
whatever the fuck they're doing down south, we just don't give a fuck. We just drive there if we want a bit of chaos in our holidays, like for 2 weeks.
So you want to make Mexico?
Yeah,
So
yeah. I
yeah,
have like the Alps. They're a natural border. We don't even need to build a wall.
fam,
It's
for God's
already
sake,
there.
right? If I could draw the cartoon with you and the point and going over your head with the EU, then I would do it. You know. Though seriously speaking, though, I'm very sad that the UK got this close to actually considering this and then getting the final push by whatever means. I know I spoke about it in previous podcasts, that and I know Joe Poser, he always corrects me very quickly to say that I'm a conspiracy theorist and all that.
Yeah, I love that. By the way,
Um,
I'm not
uh,
chiming in a lot, but I'm reading all the stuff you're doing there in the
yeah, you're
politics
kind of
channel. I
standing
love
back
that.
and watching the
I just
on
have
the
too
side.
much shit going on right now, but I
Mm,
find it great. Yeah.
yeah, but anyway, I do think when you look into Brexit and the stuff that happened around the campaign, um, especially linked to things like what we now know about Facebook's business model, what we know about Cambridge Analytica, what we know about the movement of ultra nationalists and sort of global players in populism like Steve Bannon. Those things are connected. And if you paid attention to what was happening on the other side of the water there a couple of days ago, the American Congress, the House of Representatives specifically, they're now, of course, controlled by the Democrats. So they're doing all these uh, hearings in different committees. And one of the committees related to um, oversight and security, I think, was released 81 names of people that they want to get documents from. And this is basically, it's not related to the Robert Mueller investigation because they kind of get first dips on things. That's my understanding, that the reason why now that the House of Representatives can go and ask for these things is that, this is stuff that already is in the hands of the special investigation. So, but we're beginning to see all these individuals that have connections over here in Europe, um, and it's beginning to look more and more grim. And there is a groundswell of people wanting to get something similar here, like a thorough investigation of how uh, social media, lobby interests, organizations that were set up to campaign, how they were actually funded, where they get their support from, did they follow electoral law? And there has actually been a National Crime Agency investigation put into looking into different actors, and also the Leave campaign and the Remain campaign have been fined for different offenses during the Brexit referendum campaign. But the Remain campaign didn't get nearly as large a fine as the Leave campaign that got comparatively a huge fine. I mean, I think if you look at the amount of money being spent, it's a small percentage, but it is the largest fine that has been given out, I think, for electoral basically irregularity and fraud in the UK for a long time, or maybe ever. Um, and I just think there are enough signs that go that I do think some politicians need to take this up and actually champion investigations and hearings or whatever it takes to dig into it more, because there are parts of the referendum campaign that are really shady, and there's a lot of stuff there if you want to look it up around Aaron Banks, for example, who basically paid 8 million pounds into the Leave campaign, supposedly out of his own funds from the UK, but he's never been able to show where that money came from, and his business empire, and I use inverted commas there, is very, very nebulous. It's very hard to see
By
exactly
empire,
how
you
it's set up.
mean it's rather a business imperium.
Well, it's kind of, he owns different stuff. The main thing that's related to the Brexit campaign is that he had a couple of insurance companies that were doing legitimate sort of insurance transactions. They were taking on customers and insuring them, car insurance, stuff like that. But the funny part was that his Leave campaign had office in the same building. He says he had separate staff working on doing Leave campaign stuff. But what TV and journalism at the time shows, and also later with interviews and so on, was basically that his insurance company staff was also being used to do Leave campaign stuff.
Yeah, I mean
And
that's
then it gets even more shady
wouldn't
because you're like,
surprise
okay,
me.
you're getting hundreds and thousands of people's personal data here. And basically, the
Yeah,
theory is that he was using that to target people that were in the right category for Leave, and would, again, this kind of really, really intricate voter um,
Manipulation stuff.
voter manipulation. I think is a good word because, and this is what you'll see in the U.S. as well if you look into it, that it doesn't actually take a lot of thousands of votes to swing a given
No. You
district
just
or
need a
area.
few votes in the right
Yeah,
areas. I mean, people know this. This is
that's the
known
thing. And if
since
you
the
do the
60s.
math, especially in the U.S. where you have the college and some of the states have stupendous amount of votes to vote in the president compared to other states where they don't have proportional representation there in the electoral college. So if you target the right states, turn whatever it was, a couple of 10,000s of votes, then you might actually all of a sudden swing the presidential election. And again, in
Yeah, I
Brexit,
mean,
what's
my thing is more like, I'm not saying you're wrong. Um, I'm actually coming more and more around to some of your points about Russia and like labor in the UK.
I didn't say it
Because
was Russia.
no. But
That's
I mean, you said that on a show once, and
yeah, exactly that.
I'm coming around to that. But my point is basically, okay. So I get like there's lots of people saying, there's meddling in the elections, and there's these shady things with social media and stuff, and my objection to that is like people saying that's new. So my point
I
is just
remember
just
that.
don't have a referendum. A referendum is, when I
Yeah.
say it's a
Mm,
stupid idea because people are dumb, that is just like a polemic way. It is more a stupid idea because people will get influenced. And that is not new. Like during the Cold War and afterwards, ever since, you all, before social media, we had propaganda. We had state propaganda, right?
yep,
And
for
we had
sure.
huge problems with state owned media in Germany, in the UK, perpetuating, um, often colleagues of mine, journalists in these media outlets, perpetuating stuff that was on the agenda from the government. If they knew it or they didn't, doesn't matter. Like, were other ways of influencing people. The problem is that the problem with a referendum and something like this is that is you're directly influencing people on an issue. I mean, there's also electoral meddling, and you can, as you said, you can manipulate the election of the president, or you could manipulate the election, let's say in Germany, and get some crazy AFD fuck voted
Mm,
in, but that is all a lot more difficult. And I mean, that's something that I mean, we talked about this, like our democratic system and like representation there, right? That's one of the things it's aimed against. Be,
yeah,
be,
and
because you're basically, you're not directly deciding something. You're voting for somebody who stands for
mm,
something, and generally they will have their agenda. But let's say I want the conservative side, and I'm voting for the conservative guy. He has a vested interest in, like, um, voting for, like getting certain changes done because he's the conservative guy. If you know what I mean. I mean, we see lots of this falling apart. Where I said basically Russia is like, you were saying the Tories are falling apart. I'm like, the Labour is falling apart. I don't understand what Labour is
oh
doing
yeah,
in the UK. No idea
yeah,
what the fuck. Like, nobody can explain to me satisfactorily in what world uh, the stuff Corbyn does is in the interest of his party. And it has to be like, okay, politicians are always in
mm,
for themselves, but basically, if you're the leader of a political party in our two electoral systems, right? You have to represent the interests of the party, generally, and that there needs to be. You would think that there are, until Trump and until Corbyn, you kind of thought that there were mechanisms in place where the party could get rid of a person that is
yeah.
destroying it, you know,
I think
but
we're in the
apparently not.
social media age now where people are growing up to this kind of instant integration and interaction with any subject that you can think of, and the sheer speed of how things are happening is just even people like us, we're beginning to just not being able to keep track anymore, right? And I can understand why young people today are like, there's other stuff going on for them where this massive barrage of information. And um, it's funny how every age has sort of advancements that are great for some things, and then other things it's absolutely shit, right? Because you know if we look at the aeroplane, for example, fantastic invention, has done so much to bring the world together and enable trade. It's also one of the worst climate problems we have at this point in
Mm.
time, right? That we're so dependent on it, and we should actually stop flying, really, if we want to not have climate change. But at this point, the genie's out of the box, right? How the
Yeah,
heck do
you
we do
can't put it back in.
that? Computers, fantastic invention as well. Again, like we couldn't imagine the world without computers, but here we are, where we now have mini computers in our hands, looking like a telephone, doing different things, and then just the sheer power at our fingertips now, and the way we're connected has nearly gone into sci-fi territory of how people imagined that we would be in 100 years from now, but it's only been a couple of decades where, like, what do we do with that integration? And we see now, I think, the dangers of it, where there's absolutely no effective regulation about this. Again, the EU regulations and things like that, defenses, understanding, so on, all those things, they're in their infancy. And malicious actors out there will have recognized it straight away, like they in the past recognized computer hacking as something that could be done. Every technology will have a dark side that, you know,
Yeah, I feel like it's just like with computers, that's just like humanity. What you're feeling there is like people, like I get into fights with Dave, right? About like when he left Twitter.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
these people that are just fucking driving me insane because they're like, oh, Twitter is so bad and it's all this toxic environment. And I'm like, you know what you're realizing there? That's just humanity. What you've
yeah,
done there is you've given everybody in the world the ability to be like in a pub together and being a bit of like disconnected and protected, like they're not, giving them the ability to be not be afraid and say what they think.
yeah.
And what you're realizing there is that just what you're calling toxic is just humanity. I mean,
Yeah.
this is things that people think. They just up till now they didn't have the ability to tell other people.
Or
Um,
if they did, they should be able to maybe take a slap or a punch or whatever,
yeah,
but now,
there were repercussions, and now it's
yeah,
just easier to say that without repercussions. But the problem is not the
mm,
technology, and the problem is not that people are saying that. What you're doing is just you're realizing that humanity is like that, and I don't think it's that bad. I feel like it's kind of it's also empowering in other places, and it's just like the way things change. But you are completely right. What we have to do is adapt our democracy to this,
mm,
right? And we cannot run into stupid referenda like this. We need to
it's
realize that that these things can be manipulated. What we cannot not do under any circumstances is have e-voting, because we know that computers have
yeah,
security vulnerabilities, and anybody, any country who puts in e-voting machines is
mm,
fucking dumb. I mean, they're
yeah,
just calling for the elections to be fucked with. What are
yeah.
you
I
doing? The other system
fully
has
agree.
worked for 50 years. Why change it?
Mm, yeah.
Maybe, okay, that's grumpy old fat, but it's true. Like some things you can just keep that way.
No, I totally agree with that stuff. Where there we have to be nearly like the ancient Greeks. That it has to be a physical interaction where you bring yourself to the voting place, and you know and every, like, in other places of the world where that happens, there's still fraud, election fraud, and so
Yeah,
on.
of
But it's
course,
just a
yeah,
bit
but
more
it's
difficult if
harder.
your society in general is kind of set up to be more or less trusting and with
Yeah,
checks and
and
balances, you
don't
know.
he
So
have these fucking
uh,
things where you have like petition.org, and the German Bundestag has this thing where people can like click a button and then like no, don't have that, right? If people feel strongly about an issue, they should get their political party to do that, or they should create an organization, right? That
mm,
represents them. We have ways of doing this. We don't need to put this in the digital sphere. We don't have to. Um,
and I think earlier you were saying about how the parties are breaking in the UK, and
oh, they're
I,
breaking here too. They're breaking
yeah,
everywhere, apparently.
but what you have
SPD is
to,
non existent anymore. They're worse than Labour. They're fucked. They're completely fucked. Next election, they're at like 5% or something.
uh,
Like, what the hell?
and they were a powerhouse before, yeah.
Yes.
So what, like nobody has the real answer for that, but I think there is, you have to be careful, right? Because if you look at social systems and sort of systems theory and so on, and I remember reading a French guy, Edgar Morin, who did a lot of sort of looking into history and uh, political
I'm
structures, human
drinking
society,
straight
and so on.
rum now, by the
Yeah.
way.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm
I'm
up
on
to
my
that
second rum
point.
here as well. But
Tea's long
Edgar
gone.
Morin, he he put in the what was basically his theory of the sum being greater than its parts, right? And that's kind of maybe an old schism, but he explained it through different things. Where when it really clicked with me was that um, the theory of a system can't be closed hermetically, right? You can't sort of have a system that just works and never gets any input from the outside, right? Because at a certain point,
Yeah.
that will break down as well, which we have seen in if we take communist Russia or whatever. You know, if we call that a closed system, at a certain point it hollows itself out, right? So the most successful systems are the ones that have the ability to get information in, but also to shut the gate sometimes. But they need to kind of be open closed, and you know
Hmm.
keep the system sort of protected, but also take in information that comes through and adapt, right? Because if you don't, then either if you close hermetically, then you know at a certain point you're gonna hollow yourself out, or if you're like if you have no borders at all, and here I'm talking like philosophical borders, like in thoughts or
Yeah.
in systems, like not actual borders, then what will happen is that you know uh, the system will disappear. Or you can also have like a you know that if you don't take heed of the input that you do get, then what is on the fringe can all of a sudden overturn you and then smash your system and replace you, right? Which is what he used with the French Revolution. That obviously that came to a point where the French Republic was born rather than having a you know a monarchy. Um, and you know we all kind of know these things when we talk about it, but I think you have to think about it in everyday life as well. That you know even the Roman Empire collapsed, right? I mean, it was probably a
Famously,
quite
yes.
successful empire for a long time because they had a lot of stuff going for them with developing new technologies and kind of you know after subjugating the locals, then they kind of left them to you know use their technology and kind of become rich and
Yeah, they
prosperous, but
made they
also
made them Romans.
they
That,
made them
yeah.
Romans, right? But um, you know we have to think of this as that there will always be the risk of a system just running into the ground, and this could be where we're at, right? Which is not something that we really want to entertain.
Yeah,
So you have to kind of adapt, change, find something
I feel
that
like
keeps you going, you know.
I feel like our problem is that intelligent people are getting too much into their filter bubbles and are getting too ideologically minded. That's the rum kicking in. So what I mean is like it's not like, let's talk about the German democracy. It's not like we do not have new political parties. We have the AfD. We have a right anti-European movement and a party that is very successful. What we do not have, like what I'm missing in Germany, and I come to the realization that I've missed this since I've voted, is so I was always a SPD voter, so basically Labour, right? So left. Germany always had two big parties, the Conservatives and then basically the Labour Party, and but I was always like on the right wing of the Labour Party. My parents were very much left, and I'm conservative. Wouldn't surprise you to hear, probably, right? But I'm not nationalist conservative. I'm not conservative. I would never vote the Conservatives because for the simple reason that they have like Christdemokratisch, like they have Christ in their name. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm as unreligious as I can get. I can't vote that party. And so in Germany before the Second World War, I had a party called the Centrum, the Center Party.
Yeah.
Which was a baseline conservative party that was kind of like, they weren't left and they weren't right. And I'm kind of missing that. I think that's the thing we're currently missing in Germany, because what I see is that the left gets more and more ideologically minded. They get more extreme, and the conservative people, they get pushed more by this. They get pushed more and more to the right, and we do not have a party in the middle. And SPD is kind of disintegrating because the left people in the party don't think it's left enough. They're going to the left, and the right people going to the other conservatives. But like, I think there would be people that would just be in a centrist conservative party, and we don't have that because being conservative is like really uncool. Like you're an outcast in society if you say you're conservative. Interestingly, in Germany we do have a centrist party, which people don't recognize as that, which is the Green Party, which is getting more and more votes. But they're very weird bunch.
They're a fringe party in most countries still, but
not here anymore. Like they're a mass party here, but like they have like this. They have this. The green, the nature preservation, saving the planet thing, which I think is, I've never understood that that's in a political party, because it's basically outside the political system. It's something sorry.
You will see at a certain point this will come into play, because I don't know if you saw, we had the students in the UK going out and
we have that here too. Yes.
So basically not going to school but protesting and so on, and it's not gonna go away. I think that's gonna continue.
But that's a good example. Like I read a really good commentary in like a conservative newspaper in Germany, who's basically saying, basically what you shouldn't be afraid of is global warming and the environment going to shit. What you should be afraid of is these students protesting, because they're being led by the nose. I mean, it is surprising to me how close the Green Party and the anti-European AfD is in a lot of cases.
Is that how it's looking?
That's the way it's looking to me. Because the problem is, if you're saying you want to preserve the environment at any cost, right?
Yeah.
They are saying this as a party. That is like kind of their program in a lot of places. I mean, don't want to generalize over the whole party, but a lot of the people voting for them is like, we need, global warming is destroying the planet. We need to prevent this at all costs. That is very dangerous. Like, you can't do it at all costs in a democracy. That's not how it works.
It's kind of piecemeal changing of different technologies, support structures.
Yes, but you also have to whatever you want to do in a democracy. If you're in Germany and you want to save the planet, and you're like, we want to get rid of all diesels, right? And then 20 million people say, no, fuck you, I run a business, right? I can't run it with a Tesla. This doesn't work. I need my diesel, at least for the next 25 years. There's no, like, everybody who's doing shipping. It's like we don't have, like, trucks that run on electricity. We can't do this, right?
Yeah.
And you have to expect that. You have to accept that. And I mean, it's a different thing if you're protesting on the street. That's okay. Like, I'm not against kids protesting. But it's like the danger is if you're going and you're taking that into the political system, aside from being like a protest movement, right? And you're saying, I am a political party within a democratic system that says we have to do this at all costs. That is always very dangerous. And I'm gonna make myself very, very, very unpopular here right now.
They're gonna round up the meat eaters, Fab. You're gonna end up in a re-education camp.
So I don't know. There's a great German book and a movie they made after it called ist wieder da, which is kind of a dark comedy book about Hitler. And the plot is, in the middle of Berlin, there's an explosion, like it's today, right? In the middle of Berlin, there's an explosion, and Hitler lies there and he wakes up.
And I think you've told me about this one before.
And he basically shot himself in the head in the bunker and then turns up there. And now this is Hitler in the modern times running for president. And basically, there's one great scene in it where he looks at the Green Party and he goes like, if I'm in government, I'm forming a coalition with the Green Party. And this other guy goes like, what the fuck? And he's like, no, think about it. Yeah. They're about home, the environment, right? And he says all these things where like they're exactly the same as Nazis. And you're like, so I do feel like that, like we have like these weird schisms where like you have these weird political parties where like if you have a party whose main let's forget the environment thing. Just think you have a political party whose main impetus is getting out of the euro or the EU, which is what the AfD was founded for. Right? It's an anti-European, an anti-Euro party, basically.
Okay.
It's like, what kind of a party is that? That is not how our political system works. What are you doing when you reach that goal? Are you disbanding the party?
Exactly.
No, of course you're not. Like that's not how it works. You're supposed to represent the interests of the people voting for you.
Yeah, the policy program needs to have a bit more than one paragraph.
Yeah, it needs to transcend that. It also needs to transcend we care for the environment. That's like, yes, you can do that, but like,
but how?
No, what else? There's other fucking, yes, the planet might be doomed in 100 years, but still there is problems our government needs to solve today that have nothing to do with the environment. Like we need to make sure that the schools work. We have a big problem with people getting older and older, and like the younger people can't pay for the.
How do we pay for it?
For the social system,
the same standard of living. And the thing is, no political party is willing to say these days that, you know what, you're not going to have the same life that your grandparents had in the boom generation who are now retired and living it up. Because
That's exactly what my parents are doing. How do you know? Fuckers.
But I mean, that's the really dark comedy part of this, isn't it? That the most liberal and happy, successful generation that we've known in the modern times are also the ones that set us up for this horrible dystopian apocalypse society thing that we're.
But it is not a horrible dystopian society. That's the other thing. That's the other thing the other objection I always have to Dave. It's like we had peace. You and me, for all our life, we had peace. We're sitting here at like 11 o'clock doing a fucking podcast.
Yeah.
Like
drinking rum from the other side of the world. Yeah,
So we
yeah.
can, like, speaking of technology, we have the ability to do that. I mean, the value it brings me just to talk to a Danish guy who now lives in Ireland
Mm,
and
mm,
talk politics and Warhammer with him. Just
yeah,
think, like, I'm not usually not thought of as a positive person, but let me do this here. Like,
yeah.
think how amazing that is.
We're saving the Warhammer for episode 484, isn't it? So
Yeah, yeah,
sorry, guys.
we'll
No,
have a
anyone
Warhammer
else?
episode coming
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, and I think actually for a conservative person, that's very progressive way of thinking. But that's it's not all bad, and it'll we'll manage our way out of this. And I want to think that as well. But
Putin
it's
will die at some point. I mean, the guy's not a
listen,
cyborg.
I heard a really interesting interview with a guy, university professor, who wrote a book called "We Need to Talk About Putin."
Right, you
Uh,
sent me a link to this. I'm gonna
yeah,
put that in the show notes.
and I'd like to read this book because it's made by a scholar, so it's not just somebody doing an opinion piece. This is a guy that has studied Russian society and has been there, and really, there's a lot of information crammed into it. I think, from what I can glean from his interview and what I've read about it, and it's fascinating because he makes no bones about it that basically Putin has set up a modern kleptocracy with his oligarchs that are the favored power holders in Russian society, but the average Russian is actually doing okay, because they are looking after, sort of making sure that they have a sort of, what would you call it, like decent standard of living and all these things. But it's a huge country, and of course there are differences and so on. But what his point was, that we in the West seem to give Putin this kind of mastermind persona where he's sitting there holding all the cards, pulling all the strings, bringing about the stuff that he wants to happen through meticulous preparation and planning. But actually, his point is that Putin is a much more sort of, he sets out some policies, if you want, on where he wants the world to move, and then he leaves his lieutenants and oligarch, underlings to kind of decide for themselves how these things should happen, because he's sort of encouraging this kind of competition amongst them. Apparently, that
Yeah, you know
they're
what
all
that
sort of.
you know what that is. I read Ian Kershaw's Hitler biography,
Mm-hmm,
and he calls that working towards the Führer. So
mm,
the way Hitler
something like
ran the Third Reich is not, he said, do this, do that, do that. He just
yeah,
put down general guidelines
mm,
and let people work towards that. And the guys, and there was competition between them, right? And the guys who did it best, he kind of championed.
yeah, exactly. And it seems to be that that's kind of the same thing that's happening here. That also keep him with clean hands, so to speak. That it's
Yeah, yeah,
easier.
that's the same with Hitler.
Yeah,
Like they couldn't even,
yeah,
like scholars who like it was hard work. Like there was a, you won't believe this, but, and people will think I'm insane, but like look into this. There was a scholastic scientific debate for decades if Hitler actually like ordered the Holocaust, if he like
mm,
even knew, because there,
yeah,
like, obviously he knew, but the thing is you have to prove it, right? This is science, right? So you have
yeah.
to have like, you have to have like
Did
documents.
he did he put his signature
Yeah,
on
and
an
he
order?
was very like, he was
Yeah,
very careful like not to do that.
yeah,
But he didn't have to do that. He just had a speech and said, kill all the Jews.
mm,
So obviously we know that he knew, but like
yeah,
actually
yeah, yeah.
tying that down is another thing. And I completely believe. So this book sounds really interesting, and I completely believe that Putin, a guy who went through the hard knock school of the KGB, and who was by
That's the
all
thing. Yeah,
accounts a very successful KGB operator, which in itself is quite an
mm,
achievement, because that
yeah,
is like kind of like the Cardassian Obsidian Order. They're all backstabbing each other.
mm,
So he knows the fuck what he's doing.
yeah. But it's just interesting how he gets this kind of credit for masterminding everything, but actually he's more sort of, just as you say, setting out guidelines and kind of to his
Well, yeah, but
puppets
that
to.
that happens in history as well. Like,
Yeah.
that's the same thing with Hitler, where people were like, "Yeah, it's
and
all
and
Hitler." No,
and
it
it
wasn't all
kind.
Hitler. It was all the fucking German politicians at the time. Everybody. The same with Stalin. Where lots of stuff that gets attributed to Stalin is actually just like him pointing in a general direction, and then Molotov being a
Mm.
fucking shithead and doing really horrible stuff. For example, stuff like that.
And it kind of gives me the impression that once I've read this book, I will probably be able to see why things happen where it seems counterproductive or counterintuitive, right? Um, but part of the bigger picture, it kind of makes sense because there has been other scholars of the regime and Russian sort of culture and society in general, where they're saying that they also prefer this kind of strategy of creating confusion, which is basically that the more you can sort of disorient your opponents and gaslight them or kind of make them believe things that are not there, or sort of wonder about their established truths that they adhere to, that they start questioning themselves. And that's apparently a very Russian thing to do. Um, so it kind of makes sense that you would sort of go like, just
I wouldn't
let's
say I know what you're saying. I wouldn't say it's a very Russian thing to. Well, I would say it's a very Bolshevik thing to do,
mm,
and because they ruled the country for so long, it probably during the Cold War became a very Russian thing to do.
yeah,
Interestingly enough, a strategy that miserably failed in the Cold War. I mean, if you analyze the Cold War, basically the Soviets lost the Cold War because the Americans just steadfastly held onto an ideology.
mm,
Just their ideology was capitalism. But in a way, it's amazing to me. Whenever I think about this, amazing that they held on to this ideology more steadfast than the Soviet regime did to communism.
mm,
I mean, the Soviet regime, for some, like, you could argue that it fell apart because it wasn't holding on to communism. As you said, it kind of destroyed itself from the inside.
but I
Because
think there was technological issues there as well that they
that
just
that too, yes,
to
but also like the elite would
mm,
not adhere by the same standards, and that
yeah,
would
yeah, I
kind
get
of
what you're saying. Yeah, yeah, because
undermine
if
the
they
whole
have been
system.
pure and so on, then
They had special
maybe they,
shops where
yeah,
they got all
mm,
got all the good stuff, and people saw that,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, 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 yeah.
and capitalism just worked better as an ideology, and the
Mm,
US was. I mean, that's amazing, and something. I mean, the more I think
mm,
about it, that you kind of have to look back into. Where it's like you had
yeah,
all these different presidents and very different motives, but that was kind of the thing they all held on to, like
yeah,
from Reagan, from
mm.
Kennedy to Reagan to Nixon, all these
Yeah.
different people.
And I think the big middle class that got created in the 50s and 60s in the US were probably part of that glue, right? Where they weren't discontent enough to kind of go, kind of shit, let's do something else. It was like, most people actually got a bite of the cherry, and
Yeah, and it wasn't
it
shit. I mean,
was,
you had
yeah,
your car,
yeah,
you know.
dinner parties. You could go to, big country, lovely places, go on holidays. Yeah, lots of freedom
So
as well. Yeah.
but I think to your original point, I think, yeah, that misdirection thing is a big thing. But I do think that's not even a Soviet thing. That is decidedly a Bolshevik thing. That's how the
Mm-hmm.
Bolsheviks took apart. That's how they owned the revolution. That's how they took apart their enemies, and that is what what created the GPU, the OGPU, the NKVD, the one big chimera that eventually became the
Mm.
KGB, which is
Yeah.
what Putin, by all accounts, grew up in, steeped to the fucking nostrils in
Yeah.
this ideology of like, how do we disrupt, like, how do we fuck with the West Germans, like, you
And you
know
know what? I think that loops perfectly back to the whole thing that we've been talking about. That the problem right now is that our key player in the UK, the British Parliament, have lost sight of where they need to be, right? They can't agree on where to go because they all have their little universe that they want to swim in. And I think this is because, for better or for worse, and I think I've said this before, we're part of the EU or we're in Europe.
Yeah, you're part of Europe. You can't get rid of that.
Yeah.
Like, you're part of the
The,
continent.
these are the clans that we need to play with to be successful and, have a decent life, right? And if we can't get our act together as a continent or an area, because we need to be a block. I'm sorry, guys out there whoever of our listeners believe in the whole sovereignty and Britain has a bright future on its own and all that. I'm sorry to take this away from you, but
we have any listeners left.
You're gonna be a mini put. You're gonna be the smallest guy in the room in anything you're gonna do from now on. Like there are only blocks in the world now.
I think
belong to one of them.
that is one of the things I think is a danger. And I had a colleague at Heise who I would debate politics over at lunch, right? And he's always like a very, very left, very independent thinking, and he was always championing these independence movements, right? Of Scotland, of like what's the Spain? What's that?
Or the Basques.
The
Catalans.
The Catalans, right? Yeah. Whatever. He was always championing this, and I'm like, dude, in a world that's getting more and more connected, right? That's growing together. That's creating blocks. That is like we're on the path. Like if you look at Star Trek, right? We're on the path eventually to world government. That's where we're going at some point. Either we're going there or we're descending in the next dark ages, and it's going to take us a few millennia. But like that's where we're going. That's where that's what happening in 40K in Star Trek. It's inevitable. It will happen at some point, and we're going in that direction. And people are going like, oh, but we are special. We need our own country because, they're just short-sighted, dumb bastards that need to get out of their fucking country, And I am a big believer in like sending your kids to like in school, sending them off a year. I was a year in Australia was the best thing that happened to me. I learned so many things about what makes Germans, about how stupid little short-sighted nationalist certain things are, and sorry, I even like if you're from Scotland, we will have listeners that object to that, but I can't understand the fucking independence movement there. No, no, you don't want to be a small little like fucking country that has nothing, has no economy, and is basically producing whiskey and cheap wool. Like, no. Yeah, okay, but like yeah, but you Danish guys are producing a lot more, I think, aren't you? But I mean, like, even if you're producing oil, you want to be connected to markets, right? Yeah. And you're still becoming rich if you're part of the UK. Like if you're owning the oil plant, it doesn't matter if you like. For you, it doesn't matter what country you belong to. You want the fucking money, right? I just like these subdivisions and making like. If you're one of the guys who want to make the planet, save the planet, and want to get rid of all this pollution bullshit, right? You can't be one of those guys who's also going, oh, we need to subdivide every fucking... No. We need to get together. All of Europe needs to get together, and we need to think about how do we generate energy in a more efficient way. Like, are we doing nuclear power plants? If we do, where do we put them? Do we do wind energy? Where do we put the energy? Where do we put the power lines? Where do we put the water pipelines? Where do we put the oil pipelines? What the fuck are we going to do? Right? Yeah. And we're not going to be like deterred from that, from like a fucking line on the map that somebody drew in Vienna after the Napoleonic Wars. Like, and, with some stupid nationalist pride. It's pride. It's all pride.
And we have a wedge now, and that's which is clamoring for blue passports and
the fucking like what the fuck are you guys thinking that is even like on your mind? Like, what? Who the fuck cares about the color of your fucking passport?
And the Queen on the currency flag.
The Queen is a fucking problem. That's the problem. Like, this nationalist, stupid, dumb bullshit. It's just like that's the thing that's holding us back. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
It's dumb. It's like all this shit is dumb. I'm a long time. I don't believe anymore that we should get out of nuclear energy. Basically, for a long time, I was a big proponent of getting completely out of nuclear energy. Now I've changed my mind. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what side you're on. It doesn't make no fucking sense for Germany to go. We go completely out of nuclear energy, and the whole Belgian and French border is full of nuclear power plants. Like, what the fuck does it matter to us? Like, we don't have any power, and their fucking power plant blows up next to us? Like, what?
It needs to be part of the mix, doesn't it? Because you can actually get quite a big amount of energy out of okay, there's some hassle still with the waste and so on, but comparatively, if it's between killing off the species, as you say, in about 100 years, or maybe trying to actually find a solution, then I think I'd take the power plants,
or whatever. Like, but we need to find a solution together. Us saying we're not doing it, and the Belgians like literally 20 kilometers like on the other side of the border having a 60-year-old power plant. That's like fucking insane.
Yeah.
And just because there's like an invisible line there.
Yeah, the fallout won't go across the border,
Yeah, in Belgium, that's like that's even a country. Like, they don't. How many languages? How many cultures? Like, why are they nationalistic? I don't get that. It's just like this is so short. But I mean, it's human, right? Anyway, let's talk a bit about copyright.
There's one thing I just wanted to show you, because I think I find it interesting, because I read this in The Guardian about the rise of populist rhetoric from world leaders, and it's a very interesting article that shows that in the last 15-ish years, I think the amount
the
of
top
rhetoric
3 are all leftist. Interesting.
Yeah, well, that's Venezuela, and of course Trump is up there as well. Even Theresa May gets a slightly higher score than politicians like Tony Blair and Angela Merkel.
Angela Merkel is at 0.
So
but that's pretty true, because she doesn't do anything.
So Muti is basically the the gold standard for.
Well, she's at 0 because she doesn't do anything. That's her thing. Like, don't move.
Okay,
if in doubt, don't move at all. If you make no decision at all, that's this is exactly the opposite of populism, where you go, let's do this decision. Doesn't matter why. Yeah.
So anyway, the thesis here, based on speech analysis or from 40 countries, from leaders from 40 countries,
right,
shows that there is an influx of populist rhetoric coming into those if you look at the data from those 40 countries. So it's just interesting, and I think we as news consumers, people that need to vote, so on, it's stuff you need to think about and have a look at and go like, I've been to these countries, so I know them, or I read news for them, or whatever, and just think about the terms being used, what people are saying, the way it's being delivered, and also compare that to then the list of I think is it the nationalist, sort of, there's a checklist for when a country goes nationalist and slides into fascism, what
it's like
the topics are, for that. And we all need to be more aware of this, because I think this is a danger for the world in general, that we will slide into this kind of...
what I find in hindsight extremely hilarious? That Angela Merkel, a person who I am on the record of saying is horrible for Germany, and I still believe she is a very bad politician she's good as a politician, she's very bad for the country. Basically, her stick is not doing anything. the world has changed in a way where she's like the shine. Like, I wouldn't even object to her like being the shining example compared to most other leaders in the world right now. And that is not a reflection of her having changed in any way, or my opinion having changed in any way. It's just a reflection on the whole world, on everybody else being shit and going to hell.
Yeah.
I just thought
it's funny how our standards go down.
Yeah, or how it just changes, changes perspective, changes everything.
Yeah.
Right.
So that was just a little thing for you guys to look into. It's really interesting and stuff that's based on actual data analysis. Like, and you can do that with speeches and words, and that, you can totally be scientific about it as well. So that's the kind of stuff you need to do,
Since we have praised the EU so much, I would now like to say that there are some EU laws that make me want to wish for a Dexit. And this copyright thing is one of them. And I have ignored it for a long time, basically because I had a lot, like when this all was being debated in November, October, November, when this all came up and people started writing about this, I was very busy changing jobs. And I ignored it for a while after that because I had ignored it. But now you basically can't ignore it anymore.
Yeah.
And this fucking law is so dumb. It's like blatantly written by people who do not understand how the internet works. And
before we go into the details of it, could we take a very quick break? Is that okay?
We can do that. That's not a bad idea. I'm gonna put the stream on standby for a minute for a short toilet break. We'll be back very soon. Right, I'm back here. Let's wait for Mike. And I'll just need to put in the show notes where we are so I can. It's always handy if you do a toilet break, if you put in a note in the show notes that you had a break, because otherwise you will have to listen to the whole thing to edit it out and find the break. You won't have to listen to it, but like scan the waveform, and sometimes I forget. And then I realize after I've mastered the file that there was a break. And then that is completely horrible. I'm talking to the chat meanwhile, just to keep them entertained.
Are they saying something?
So far, no. But also, no. I was just talking to them for 10 seconds before it came back, or maybe 20.
I'm shifting to Talisker Storm.
So shall we talk about the EU copyright thing then? And you were saying we people won't realize, but I edited out a little break here, a little peek behind the curtains. If you watch this on YouTube, you will know. But Mike switching to Talisker Storm. You can hear the bottle in the background. Sounds amazing. Yes. So my big thing about this, even without going into details about this law, I'm amazed that the EU is currently debating this. Where you're like, fuck guys, you should table anything you're doing right now, and you should try to figure this Brexit thing out. Like, you should try to, as the EU, you should now try to figure out how to extend like an olive branch to the Brits, right?
Yeah.
And get them out of the fucking disaster they're in. Don't idly stand by, because, I mean, make no mistake, this is threatening the EU as well. And the EU is threatened like by Brexit. We had the financial crisis in Greece. You know, we had all of this stuff. Ukraine, you know, like the political stuff with Russia, and we're like, the thing we're doing right now is we want to make copyright law stricter. Like, seriously, guys, that's your area of focus right now.
So is it still being debated, or has it been passed?
No, it hasn't passed yet. I think the vote is like in a week or two. I've completely lost.
Yeah.
I kind of like, it's basically the fault of my colleagues in the press, who are fucking idiots and keep reporting, oh, the EU has passed this, and no, they haven't voted yet. If you look into it, it's like you've been reporting that they basically voted for the last 3 times. Like, what's going on? Part of this is that the fucking process is so hard to understand because EU.
So
but
where
no.
did it come from? What's the origins of?
Well, there's always been like a lobby that just wants to make copyright stricter. It comes a lot from, like, you know, publishing houses, big publishing companies, like the people I used to work for until the beginning of this year, who are.
So the way I understand it,
yep,
is that in order to use anybody's works of any kind, written, pictures, any original work that you have created, if anybody wants to use a derivative of that or part of it or anything, they have to get your express permission.
Yes. So
and that's, I guess, copyright law as it is now.
Yes.
But we're getting into it's like content creators now on YouTube and so on that use clips and sounds and review TV shows, all that kind of stuff. They have to get express permission to do so, right? And YouTube have to vet them as well, isn't it? They have to check that they don't have material in breach of this new copyright, because otherwise they can get fined, isn't it, if they allow that to be on their platform?
Yes. So the way it works at the moment, and this is generally not changing, the way copyright works is that it's not like a trademark. You don't have to go and say, well, I copyrighted something. Copyright generally works, and interestingly, works on pretty much like in all of our Western countries, it works the same. It goes back to the Statute of Anne and just like stuff. And there's the Berne Convention from 1886, which basically made copyright law the same, like in the US, in the UK. There are local exceptions, but generally it works like this. I make a work, whatever it is, painting, a piece of text, music, and I am automatically the owner, the copyright holder. And if somebody else wants to do anything with this, like if I draw a picture, put that on my website, and you take it and use it as an avatar on Twitter, you need my permission.
Yeah.
So generally you would need a license. So that's where Creative Commons comes in, or, you know. But if it's copyright, and by default it's always copyright, and it's like whatever 70 years after my death, or it's been prolonged forever and forever because the Disney copyrights were always running out. You need an express permission. Now the problem is the way it works right now is basically everybody breaks copyright all the time. Like I'm very careful to not do this. I'm very careful to use. So the theme song of Geek News Radio is a very, very, very old recording of a very old song that is out of copyright because it was like recorded in 1916 or something. But that, I'm very careful, but a lot of people are not. And the way it works today is just, I mean, I make memes. I take a screen cap of TNG and put some text on it and put it on Twitter.
Yeah.
Not allowed to do that. I do not have a license from CBS. Not allowed to do that. So the way it works right now is basically, as a copyright holder, the onus is on you to stop this kind of stuff. Like, that's where the cease and desist letters come in. If I see somebody using my stuff, I have to go to them and tell them, well, you're stopping this or I'm suing you,
Yeah.
And then it'll get expensive for you. Now, that's hard to do for content owners, especially if you're an independent guy, but that's how it works. And that has led to a culture where basically everybody is breaking copyright left and right. And it's just like a thing that happens, and society has accepted it, and there's ways that work. I mean, YouTube right now has like these algorithms, content IDs that go through and look for songs, and then they will flag that and tell the content, the copyright holder, and they will tell you, and there's certain ways. Now, the worst thing about this EU copyright reform is Article 13, which has been changed back and forth. It's the thing that's called upload filters. Basically, the way it stands right now is that an owner of a platform, so YouTube, Twitter, whatever, me as somebody who's created a forum, right, a web forum, it is my responsibility to see that every content that's on there is licensed, right? So as a user if I run a forum, I would have to vet every avatar people upload that they have the copyright, that it's their work or they have a license.
Yeah.
Now, you can already see, if you know anything about the internet, you can see how that doesn't work. Totally. So the thing is, it's called upload filters because first they said this is what people have to do. Now it's kind of like people have to take care of this, but it's still basically presupposes upload filters because there's no other way to do this. So an upload filter would be, whenever you upload something, I'm checking that, I'm hashing all the images on the internet, like Google could presumably do this and then sell that service to other people. And I'm checking if those are copyrighted images, right? And that'll just like destroy anything. Like, you can't use Captain Picard as an avatar on Twitter. You can't use an image of Captain Picard and make a meme. And now the thing is, there are still legal exceptions that different in every country, how you can, like, even with copyright, how you can use stuff. For example, you can't just copy text in books, but in Germany it's legal for teachers to do that when they're teaching. If it's satire, I may do this. If I'm a journalist and I'm reporting on news, there's a bomb going off in Syria. Somebody takes a picture of that. He's a copyright holder, sells it to AP, right? AP has a license to use that photo. AP publishes a story, says there's a bomb gone off in Syria. Here's a picture of a bomb. Me as a journalist for another outlet, because this is current news, under the German copyright law or the EU copyright law, I am allowed to take the picture, say, well, source AP, right? So I know that I do not have the copyright. I'm telling everybody I don't have the copyright, but because it is in the interest of people to be informed, I am, as a news organization, as a journalist, allowed to take that picture. All these exceptions you will have to take into account if you do something like this. Like, is that YouTube channel? Is that like the German news, like the public broadcaster? Are they maybe allowed to do that even if they don't have a license? Like, how would you do that? Then there's the things like, you can't do this shit. Like, I was so my big fight was I got dragged into this last week big time because my the Deutsche Journalistenverband, the German journalist union, which I'm a member of, was basically telling EU members of parliament to vote for this, and I'm like, what the fuck? What are you doing? And I got dragged into this, and I went like to a meeting and I discussed this stuff with them, and they were like, yeah, basically we're trying to protect copyright holders like you make your money off content. And it's like, okay, I understand this. And they're like, yeah, fuck YouTube, right? It's basically their argument, right? YouTube needs to, they're an engine. Google makes millions and millions of money by basically ignoring copyright rules. They know that people upload stuff that's copyright, and that all that being true, but I'm trying to explain to them, like, in 2012, no, I think in 2006, every minute there was 400 hours of video being uploaded to YouTube.
Oh, jeez.
And just imagine what that is today, right? And now imagine you want to flag that. You want to make sure there's no copyright content in that. How the fuck are you going to do this? And the people who are making these laws and who are voting for these laws and are passing these laws and are on Twitter advocating these laws, they're like, yeah, well, Google has money and, AI and the blockchain. And I'm like, no, you can't. Like, I don't know what planet you come from, but you can't solve problems with just throwing money at it.
Yeah.
What do you do? Throwing money at those servers and the problem is going to solve itself? Like, what the
wasn't
fuck?
there like a change made where there was exceptions if your business earned less than $10,000?
Yeah,
there's some kind of that's smaller content creators or platforms or whatever that weren't Google size or whatever that they would.
Yeah, I mean they keep changing these things, but my point is, like, the law is just stupid, and I don't give a damn because I'm streaming this on Twitch right now, right? And how's Twitch gonna do that? I mean, this is live video content. How are they gonna do that? And I don't care if there's smaller companies. Twitch is gonna probably fall into this. And I can't do video streaming. I can't pay for these servers. I'm fucking happy that Twitch gives me the ability to stream these things, and it's good.
Yeah, because the German laws are quite strict, right? So if they got even,
well, actually, like with this, when this comes through, it's going to be the same in all of the EU. And the thing the rest of the world doesn't understand is, like, this is like GDPR. This is like, if Google needs to change for the EU, they won't switch YouTube off for the EU. They're just going to deploy this. And at some point, they're probably just going to deploy this for US customers as well. I mean, this is going to affect the whole planet. And it's just like, fucking, who the fuck is the EU that they, like, I can tell you what this is. This is like fucking, so in Europe, we with dismay look at all these startups, and we look at Silicon Valley, and we look at Google, and we're like, oh, we would like to do this, right? And we try to set up Silicon Roundabout in London, and we try to get, like, Hamburg and Berlin to be a startup city. And it's just like, no, we won't have this startup culture because that's not how we work, Because we talked about this earlier. We're the Germans. We're the ones where the whole country just pays every year to the other part of the country, right? Like,
Ordnung muss sein.
Yeah, Ordnung muss sein. We're the ones that are insured up to our eyeballs. Like, we are not having, like, startup funding where, like, it's huge risks. Like, that's not going to happen. So instead of accepting that we can't do this and that the US does this stuff and then has all the risks, right, with this shit. I mean, and there's risks for the people involved. I mean, there's shitty working conditions, and we talked about that, crunch and startups and all of that, yes. But in the end, you have, like, platforms that are the first, that are the, the trailblazers in the digital age, and Europe just doesn't have that. We don't have that. Like, the closest thing we have is, like, fucking Spotify. And instead of saying...
I think Denmark did Just Eat as well, actually. And Skype.
Yeah, okay. I give you that. And instead of just saying, well, we can't just have that and we're okay with that. No, we have to legislate against that. Like, we have to destroy that shit. We can't be okay with that shit. We have to have like copyright laws because Google's making a lot of money with this copyright infringement. And I'm like, fuck. I'm talking to these guys. I'm talking like to my journalist union. Like, I'm a independent freelance journalist, right? I'm the guy who has the most to lose. Like, I make all my money with copyright, right? I'm selling copyrighted text to somebody, and like they could rip me off. Like, there's lots of examples where like you're selling your work to like a publisher, and so usually if I sell them stuff to publish online, they have to pay me again if they have to do it in print. Like, there's contracts with that, and there's people ripping you off, and they publish it in print without you telling, and then you owed money and what the. And I'm like, that's all just fucking peanuts, right? I can live. I'm okay. I might not be great, but I can live, and I can have Twitch, and I can have a Patreon, and I can have people like supporting me a little bit with the stuff I do. But I can't do that if you like, by trying to defend my rights, are fucking destroying the way the internet works and how people live. And the thing is, this will not go through. Like, they can pass this law, they can make all these crazy laws, but the only thing they're going to do is they're going to alienate everybody under 40, right? That's what the EU is doing with this law, because people that are 20 right now and your kids, they're not, like, they're growing up in a world where copyright doesn't work like that. And what we need to do is we need to find a way how content creators can get paid in the future with maybe different copyright laws. Like, we need to make them less strict and have other ways for people to prosper from that, instead of like making the laws more strict and just.
Yeah, because as you say, like you're a content creator, and you would probably be a bit miffed to see your written stuff being mass produced somewhere without you getting paid for it.
Yeah, but I can threaten them with a lawyer,
Yeah, but can't you every time?
No, like, of course not. But that's how it is. If you're a farmer, right, and you're growing potatoes, right, you pull all the potatoes out of the earth and you put them in a truck, and you leave the truck there overnight, right? And the understanding is that people will steal some potatoes, right? Or if you have, nobody steals potatoes, you say. If you have fucking apple trees, right? And there's a road, people will take some of the apples. To put it in the way of like Godfather, that's the cost of doing business. It's a fucking cost of doing business.
So your point is that you should generate content of a quality that it'll shift in the amount that you need to survive with whatever.
Yeah, just don't retaliate to this by nuking the internet. Like, just don't. Like, and the thing is, the amazing thing is, I mean, I can understand lobbies, and I can understand people pushing through laws, and I can understand, all the stuff we talked about, like with Brexit and with rich industrialists doing things. But the fucking rich publishers that are pushing this through, if they're dooming themselves. They're fucking themselves over with this, because the problem they have is they can't deal with online right now. And this will make them be able to deal with online much less. This will completely, if this goes through, and it goes through like this, and it gets established as it is, what this will do is, by the next 10, 15 years, just completely erode copyright. Because you're making the law so onerous that nobody will adhere to them. And
yeah, because now, like, even if you just like the meme example, as far as I understand it, right, is that if you want to make a meme after this law is in effect, you have to redraw all the elements that you before would just have cut and pasted together of different things, or put extra text on. You have to make it yourself in the likeness of the thing that you wanted to do for it to be acceptable, right?
And then the fucking AI algorithm will probably still flag it if you do it too well.
There you go. Yeah.
So my
And
thing is,
yeah.
I am somebody who's believed ever since I've done this. All the Six Gun content is Creative Commons, because I don't know how you like. I told them like, so my problem. So I told these guys I can't do copyrighted podcasts, because a podcast works like this: you put an RSS feed in your RSS reader, right?
Mm-hmm.
You click the button and it downloads the audio files. You're not seeing you don't know if you have a license. If I have a copyright on that, you just copied the audio file, right? You just fucking
Yeah. Yeah.
copied
Yeah.
my
You did. Yeah.
copyright. Like you broke my copyright, and I would have to give you permission. They're like, yeah, you give people permission. I'm like, how do I do that? Where's the framework to do that? The problem is that I, as somebody who's done free content for like 12, 13 years now for people, and is happy to do so, I do not have, even now, I do not have a framework of giving people the permission, of giving them the license. Like Creative Commons is a framework, but it's not built into things, right?
Mm.
I don't have a framework of telling the internet everything on this server you can just take. I'm okay. Fab is okay with you
Yeah.
taking this shit under certain circumstances. You know, I have share by SA as our license, so that means basically don't put it in another thing. Don't make like don't repackage
make
all my
money off it.
podcasts
Yeah.
and then sell
Yeah.
them or something.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but anything else, copy it, do whatever you want. You can even make money with it, but you have to give people the ability to get it for free as well, because I'm giving it to people for free, and that fucking framework doesn't work. So we do not have like, so if CBS was gonna go, we want you to make Picard memes because that's good for us, because that's putting Star Trek into the zeitgeist, and that means people will start watching Discovery, right? With that forward thinking, we want to give people the blanket permission to make Picard memes. There's no framework for that. Like, where do I check? Most people don't even know that CBS has the license to Star Trek. Most people think it's Paramount. Paramount doesn't exist anymore, although they exist, but they have the film license and not the Star Trek TV. Like, who knows this shit?
Yeah.
It's like,
and who takes the time to then look it up? I mean, that's what.
I mean, I have a
Yeah.
colleague. I had a colleague at work whose wife. Oh no, actually not. I'm telling lies. Wrong guy. I had a friend in Bonn, and his job was for a private, or it still is, I don't know, for a big private television, like basically ITV in Germany, right? His job was his only job at this company was clearing copyright for songs. So they would produce a TV show, they would put a song in it, and they would like pay somebody. You know, that put like, I don't know what they do. They put 10 million a year in a corner, and they're like, we're using the songs we want, and you figure out how to pay them. And that's a fucking full-time job.
Yeah.
Because it's fucking hard. I mean, there's songs that can't be put on albums because nobody knows who the copyright had. Yeah. Who has the copyright? Yes, there's free use, but that's different in every country. To like, we don't really have fair use in Germany. It works in the US. Like, the fuck? We don't need to make this worse and more complicated. Leave it as it is and fix Brexit. Fix the Greek economy, you fucking idiots.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of other worthy causes to.
Copyright works. It works. Like, us poor journalists, that, like, you know, the guys that don't get paid, the musicians that don't get paid, that have to go busking on the streets of London. You know why they're fucked? Not because the copyright laws is shit. No, because they get shafted by their record studio. And journalists get shafted by their employers. And they all these guys who want to change that copyright law, they all make good profits. They're the guys driving the Jaguars.
Yeah, but that's the thing, like...
fuck them. Fuck all of them.
And this, do you remember Lars Ulrich, the time back in the day with Napster and all that, you know, he got really torn to pieces at the time
Mm.
because he was like, I don't want people to share our music without paying for it. Metallica's MP3s were very popular at the time with Napster when the internet was in its infancy, and that was like before the Pirate Bay and torrent sharing and all that. Napster was the place to go if you wanted free music, right? And Lars Ulrich went for it, and Metallica went for it.
Yeah, but I
And
still like, yeah.
and it was the same shitstorm that hit them at the time, right? That created the original, I think, sort of us versus them on the copyright and free world kind of schism.
Yeah, and it should, because that was the same thing. Like, those guys are fucking rich. Just take the fucking loss, mate. You're flying
And
around the world in a fucking. Oh, is that? No, that's Iron Maiden. But, like,
yeah,
Metallica could have a 747 if they wanted to. They've got enough money.
and I just go like, yes, you're right. And at the time, he did seem like a bit of a prat to kind of complain so much. But he was actually he was doing it from a, let's say, philosophical standpoint, right? Going that I create stuff as a musician, and I want musicians to get paid. Um, but
Yeah,
that kind
but
that,
what
that
you
that
need
message
to,
was
mate, what you need to do at this point is talk to your friends in the record studios who are fucking over musicians left and right, right? Like, the guys who are signing the contracts where, like, John Fogerty can't fucking play his own songs for 30 years. All the songs he's written, right?
yeah, that's just wrong, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's
Yeah,
where the musicians get fucked over.
yeah.
That is where they get, like, I get, I talk with Dan, right? And Dan's like, yeah, Spotify is evil because they don't pay the musicians that much. But I'm on the other hand, like, basically they have the same model as the record studios where you sign like a
Mm.
record contract and they give you some money and then you're producing your next 6 albums for free because you need to make all that money back they gave you for the fucking tour. I mean, it's like, just see it in perspective. I mean, this is also I don't think this is a, like, you are right. There is a moral issue, and I think creators need to be paid, right?
That's the word.
I
Moral
think
issue.
I think they
That's
should
yeah.
be paid, but that moral
Mm.
issue has nothing to do with copyright law, right? Like that whole sentence in the British books, like the moral right of the author has been asserted. Like, fuck you. Copyright has nothing to do with a moral issue. Yes, I think, um, but see, for me this is like an educational thing. I think we need to educate people that, people who do work, content creators, like, should get paid.
Mm.
And for the funny reason is, like, it's coming. Like, it's coming to the new generation. These publishers and these music people are not seeing this, but it's happening right now on Twitch, right? It's happening with
Mm.
fucking emojis and, like, skins for Fortnite. But, like, how many people I've explained, like, I'm a Twitch streamer now, and, like, I'll tell them, like, I'm a Twitch streamer. Like, what are you doing there? And I'm like, yeah, I'm streaming. Like, so people can subscribe to the channel, and they're like, what for? And it's like, because they like what I'm doing, or they like what
Yeah,
another
yeah.
content creator is doing, and they
Yeah.
want to give me money. That's the moral thing. They want to reward you. And it's not like so much like giving the money. It's just like, it's a self-interest thing, right? So I watch Fab. I like how he embarrasses himself on the internet on a regular basis, and I want him to keep doing that. And he needs to earn some money for that. Otherwise, he needs to
And I
go
mean,
back to some soulless publishing job. And
and would Epic Games, would they go, oh, you're so
sorry,
you
you
have
cut
to
out there. Epic Games would go, what?
yeah, so if they're going, we've made Fortnite, you're now streaming our game, that's our intellectual property. Um, you have to buy a
Yeah.
license in order to stream. Is that because obviously if that happens, then Twitch will die. Like,
Well, the perverse thing is that Epic has no interest on doing that. They want people to stream their game, because if people
exactly.
stream their
Yeah.
game, people play their game, and then they make money. The perverse thing is that Twitch probably would still die because there's no. I mean, there's a way for Epic to tell Twitch, okay, look, Fortnite is okay, right? But look at Twitch. There's like hundreds of games and all these different publishing houses and all these studios. All they all need to tell them it's okay, right?
Yeah.
And
It'll
they
be
and
like
Twitch will get
the
sued by
biggest book
3
in the world.
studios who don't want it because they're dumb, and then it's game over.
Yeah.
And you have just destroyed a platform that is to benefit for everybody. It benefits people viewing stuff because now I can go and if I like somebody who plays Escape from Tarkov and I just watch it, like I can watch that now. That's now a thing that TV would have never provided me with that. Somebody playing Fortnite all day in his pajamas, but I want that. Twitch does that, so that's good for me as a viewer. It's good for the content creator because he can make money off that. It's good for Twitch because they make money off it. It's good for everybody. It's good for the fucking game because more people will play that game. You know? There's like
I think so, yeah.
indie games who are like fighting really hard to get streamers to play their game, you know, because they have a really great game, and the only thing they need to do is they need people to see that's a really great game. And it's like, you're destroying all of this for what? I don't even understand for what. I don't even understand who's profiting, because the guys who think they're profiting don't understand how the internet works, and they will be fucked by this as well. It's just a big bag of dicks.
Yeah.
It's like Brexit. It's the same thing as Brexit.
And you have to draw it yourself if you want to show it in a movie.
Well, I can do that. I think we all can still draw a bag of dicks.
You're proficient in the dick drawing.
All memes from now on will just be like dicks,
artist.
because that's the only thing anybody can draw. That's the great unifying glyph of mankind.
Yes.
It's the penis.
They brought us together.
Yeah.
It's a terrible state.
It's all, yeah. It's, I don't know. I just hope there will just be a big reckoning. I mean, we have young people in the streets right now. You have to imagine that. The YouTubers, they're protesting.
Oh yeah.
Well, I would have never thought that I'll see that in my lifetime.
Be bigger than the.
Well, it's bigger than a lot of things. Like, don't take people's memes away. I think they underestimate how important. I seriously think they underestimate how important Captain Picard memes are.
No, but just like, where did it all start? You know, with the Lord. Wasn't it the Lord of the Rings memes with?
Yeah, I mean, brace yourselves over.
Yeah, or the one does not just walk.
Oh no, that
water,
was Game of Thrones. Yeah, that too. Yeah. No, I think like I seriously believe if you went on the street and asked like 16 to 18-year-olds, right? You have this is a serious question. You have 2 choices. One choice is you will never be able to use a meme ever again for your lifetime. And the other choice is we will put every member of the EU Parliament up against the wall and we shoot them all. You better believe what side of that vote everybody's coming down. And I think
I see where that's going. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, it does sound a bit crazy, doesn't it? Like, yeah.
It's just like people not understanding what they're doing. It's like, oh my god. Can we? No, we can't. It's human nature. We can't get rid of this. We're all fucked.
So it looks like it will be passed. Do you think, is that the indication of?
I have no idea. It looks right now. It looks like that, but on the other hand, there's like people in the streets now. I have like that's the other thing. Like the EU Parliament is so fucking
nebulous.
Yes, it's like party lines are weird. Who the fuck knows?
But that means that there will actually be some quite important votes then next week, it seems, because if we go back to Brexit, then Theresa May says that the meaningful vote will go ahead on whatever whatever it is that she manages to get out of Brussels, because obviously she jetted off to Brussels again this week to talk to them again, and I'm sure at this point, when they get the notification that they'll be visited by Theresa May, they're all running for the hills now, because it's like Groundhog Day, isn't it? It's like EU goes, we're not going to change the withdrawal agreement. You have to figure out how to make it palatable to your parliament, and then next week there's a knock on the door, and there she is again, going, "Can you do a bit more?"
Yeah, but I don't.
And it's just like,
I don't
yeah.
understand
So
the EU. I mean, seriously, the way out of this is just like, I think it's just because they can't work together. But the way out of this would be just like table this for a year. Like let's both agree to table this for a year. I mean, I don't know. Is that legally
no,
not
but
possible?
they no, on unless the UK revokes Article 50 and then cancels their law that they're going to leave on the 29th, and
But why
then
can't
that's
the
the thing.
EU not change their way they're dealing with Article 50? I mean,
No, they can't. No,
why?
they can't do anything about Article 50. It's been announced. The UK can withdraw it at any time, and they do
Yes,
not need
yes,
to ask
but
for
yes,
permission.
I understand that, but
Yeah.
Article 50 is like a EU directive, right? It's a EU law. Like the Parliament could
No.
couldn't the council go? This is like an emergency situation. We need to vote in the fucking Parliament. We need to fucking change this article so that we can give them another year.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, I think it's not on the table. It's just because the
No.
EU is fucking stubborn as well. Like,
Yeah, I think what I've heard as a take is that they're just waiting for a little bit of Parliament to then put down what they call the legally binding assurances. I think that's what they call it. So they're not reopening the wood. They'll write, we don't intend to use this backstop where um, they would continue to keep Northern Ireland in some way of a relationship with the EU if the UK is not able to figure out what they want to do within the 2 years that the withdrawal agreement has this temporary period, which is what everybody on the hard Brexit side are going, like, we don't want the backstop because then it'll keep Northern Ireland in the EU for as long as the EU wants, and then that means the breakup of the union and blah 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 blah. So if the EU can give something that convinces most of the parliament that they will a probably never use the backstop, and b, if they do, it'll only be for a short period, and if they can give them something that looks like that it's binding or something that will, the EU has to keep to their word, then they might get it over the line. But they've been trying for 2 months now to do that, and they can't.
I just
So
I just
it's
have
like,
a feeling the EU doesn't want. Like, I think if I look at the stuff Brexit is portrayed in the media in Germany, it's basically, hey, it's British shooting themselves in the foot. Let's stand by and watch. And you're
mm,
like, fuck, guys, you're short sighted. This is also the EU going down the drain.
yeah, but it's again the EU is standing up because they were part of the negotiations, and they can't undo that agreement as well. That's that's a peace deal, like that's legislation as well passed down between the two parties. So
Yeah,
if
but they
they
could
start to
both
unravel that,
agree to dissolve the agreement, right?
dissolve the Good Friday Agreement.
No, no, I mean,
Uh,
whatever whatever Article 50, whatever thing May has with the EU, right? They could go,
oh, we'll just extend it for you.
we'll do something else. Like, we'll
Uh,
table it for a year. And then May
mm,
just needs to sell that to the. But like, then May would have to sell that to the. To
yeah,
the.
I don't think they consider that an option on
Yeah,
in the
that's the
comment.
thing. That's what I'm
No,
saying. They don't consider that an option. But why not?
no,
We
but
need
no,
to. We need
but
to help the UK as the EU. We need to help the UK solve this problem. That's what I'm saying. Why are
yeah,
we not
no,
doing that? Why are we
no,
standing by and laughing at them? That's dumb. It's short-sighted and dumb.
We'll fly you over, Fab, and get you to knock a few heads together,
Oh,
talk them out.
we'll do that. We'll just go to
Mm.
Brussels, and it'll have a room, and you'll just get me all the people in there that need to decide this shit, and give me a Glock. It's got 16,
Yeah,
17 rounds. That should be enough. Okay, guys, we're sorting this out.
yeah.
Everybody put their butts on the table. Uh,
uh,
sort this
well,
shit
Fab.
out, for fuck's sake.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
so
should wrap this up. It's like
probably
20
should.
past
Yeah.
for me. And but I thought this was really good. I like our talks here.
And Dave, we love you, but
He's not
you
listening
you
to
would have
this point.
smashed your computer about halfway into the podcast. So
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, but please, you're very welcome on the next one, and I will see you in episode 84.
Yeah,
where
I
we,
should. I think I'll record 83 with Dave is the current plan, and then we'll convene on 84 for some baking related shenanigans.
and Warhammer.
And Warhammer, of course. Yes, I mean
Goes cookbook.
that goes without saying. Yeah, we should do that. No goods. You know, sourdough
Yeah,
is
close.
looking very
Yeah.
nurgly.
I think you should just put the green food coloring in, and then
Yeah, the
go.
problem is the only thing that's bad with sourdough, it can go moldy, and you want to throw it out at that point. And if you color it green, then you can't tell if it's gone moldy, because quite often it either goes, I think, green or orange. It's the two
Awesome.
mold colors. Anyway, yes, this was great.
Yeah.
So
Papa Nurgle will be
we'll be
proud.
very pleased
Yeah.
with that show. So let me just wrap it up here. We do not have any feedback because I released the previous show an hour before we started recording. But if you have feedback, we have gotten some really cool feedback in the Twitch chat right now. Reamed saying right now, baking and Warhammer the best. This will be the best Geek News Radio show ever. But you can also, if you listen to this as a podcast, which most people are, you can give us feedback. Write to feedback@sixgun.org. If you're completely nerdy, there's a link to a GitLab page that you can leave issues at. And we're at Geek News Radio on Twitter. And I'm at Fabsh, Foxtrot Alpha Bravo Sierra Hotel. And Mike is
At M Stones MJ, MSTEVNS MJ, as far as I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good to me with my level of rum that I currently have. You can also join our Discord community. Link is on the Sixgun page, but it's also discord.sixgun.org. And I would like to thank Bandmark for hosting this stuff, and we'll see how that'll work out with Brexit.
We'll just send in our chief negotiator from Tankistan. Supreme negotiator and leader Fab, who will sort it out.
Well, we'll just have to transfer, we'll do some legal shenanigans. We'll just transfer the holding to Dave. And then he's inside the UK and everything's okay. If they do legal shenanigans, we can do that too. We'll do the Russian tactic. We'll just just confuse them with smoke bombs. Just confuse the enemy. That'll work. Anyway, yes. Thanks for listening, and people are saying they really like this discussion, so that's pretty cool.
Thanks very much, guys.
Yep. See you next time. Until then, I don't know. What are we saying to sign off here?
We should say, heal the planet.
That's not bad. I'm going with that. Perfect. Thank you. That was cool. And thanks for everybody who watched this live. So if you like that kind of stuff, we can do that more often.
Yeah, it was It's nice with a bit of interaction there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the input, like the whole U.S. I think that's good because we have the U.S. perspective because we have listeners there, and I kind of tend to forget that sometimes. And with this political stuff, I mean, they must be going like, what the Brexit? Like, what the hell are these fucking idiots? I mean, okay, we've got a lot of trouble with Trump on our own, but like,
Yeah, but we're equally good at self-immolation or whatever.
and fucking ourselves over. Yeah, we are. That's true. Well, thanks for that. I'm gonna turn off the stream now, and thanks for watching. And yep, I'll think we'll do this more often. See you next time. Thank you.